The universe operates on principles of order, quantum mechanics, gravitational constants, the predictable decay of subspace fields across dimensional barriers. For 3 centuries, the United Federation of Planets had mapped these principles with scientific precision, cataloging anomalies and explaining the seemingly inexplicable through reason and exploration. But on Stardate 47634.2 aboard the USS Enterprise D, something defied every sensor analysis, every physical law Chief Engineer Geordi LaForge had ever studied. The alarm began as a whisper in the ship's diagnostic systems, a spatial distortion in Cargo Bay 4 that registered simultaneously as matter, energy, and something the computer could only classify as unknown. Within seconds, the whisper became a scream. Subspace rippled like fabric, tearing at the seams. The cargo bay's atmospheric processors struggled against an influx of exotic particles that shouldn't exist in normal space-time. When the breach collapsed as suddenly as it had appeared, what remained made Lieutenant Worf's hand move instinctively toward his phaser. A figure stood among scattered cargo containers, wreathed in dissipating energy discharge. Humanoid, male, clad in reinforced armor, colored in shades of charcoal and black, with a cowl that concealed most of his face except for a grimace of controlled pain. A stylized symbol adorned his chest, a bat silhouette stark and predatory. The figure's cape settled around him like folded wings as he dropped into a defensive crouch, eyes scanning the cargo bay with the calculated precision of someone assessing threats and exits simultaneously. Batman's cowl systems flickered with static. His heads-up display showed corrupted data streams, satellite links attempting to connect to networks that didn't exist, GPS coordinates failing to triangulate against any recognizable star patterns. The air tasted wrong, recycled but too clean, lacking Gotham's industrial pollution. The technology surrounding him was both familiar and alien. Advanced, but designed with aesthetic curves rather than Gotham's brutal functionality. Security teams materialized via transporter, phaser rifles raised. Batman's hand moved to his utility belt, fingers finding familiar pouches even as his tactical computer screamed warnings about the directed energy weapons aimed at his center mass. "Stand down!" Commander William Riker's voice carried authority across the cargo bay as he entered, Worf flanking him. "We mean you no harm. I'm Commander Riker of the Federation Starship Enterprise. You've had what appears to be a traumatic arrival. We'd like to help you." Batman remained motionless, his cape concealing the micro-movements as he cataloged every security officer's position. The response time of the shimmering transporter effect he'd witnessed, the unusual weapons with no visible projectile mechanisms. His detective's mind began constructing theories, even as adrenaline from the dimensional breach coursed through his system. "Where am I?" His voice emerged as a controlled growl, modulated by the cowl's vocal distorters. "You're aboard the USS Enterprise," Riker said, slowly lowering his hand to signal security to lower their weapons. "A Federation starship. You came through what our sensors registered as a subspace anomaly. We're in Federation space, Sector 2520, if that means anything to you." It didn't. Batman's eyes narrowed behind the cowl's white lenses. Federation, starship. The scale of the cargo bay, the artificial gravity, the casual mention of sectors suggested something his mind struggled to immediately accept. But his training forced him to consider. He wasn't on Earth anymore, possibly not even in his universe. "I need to contact Gotham," Batman said, his voice flat. "Immediately." Riker and Worf exchanged glances. "We have no record of a planet or city called Gotham in our databases," Riker said carefully. "Perhaps if you could tell us your planet of origin, we can—" "Earth," Batman's jaw tightened. "Gotham City, North America. Earth is the Federation's founding world," Worf rumbled, his Klingon features expressing confusion and suspicion. "There is no city named Gotham on Earth. There never has been." The implications settled over Batman like ice water. The dimensional breach he'd been investigating in Gotham's East End, the experimental technology the League of Assassins had been weaponizing. It hadn't just transported him. It had thrown him somewhere else entirely. Another Earth, another universe. He'd prepared for many contingencies in his career. Interdimensional displacement had not been among them. "Captain Picard wishes to speak with you," Riker continued, his tone diplomatic but firm. "If you'll come with us to the bridge, we can discuss your situation and perhaps help you understand what's happened." Batman's mind raced through options. He was outnumbered, outgunned by technology he didn't understand, and stranded light years from anything familiar. Fighting his way out wasn't viable, not yet. But cooperation didn't mean trust. It meant observation, learning, and finding leverage. "Lead the way," Batman said, slowly straightening from his defensive posture. His hand remained near his utility belt. "But understand something, Commander. I don't know you. I don't know your Federation. And until I do, don't expect trust." Riker's expression showed a flicker of understanding. "In your position, I wouldn't either. This way." As Batman followed the security escort through corridors that curved with organic design philosophy, past crew members whose uniforms and easy interactions suggested a military structure unlike any he'd known, one thought dominated his analytical mind. Somewhere in this universe, there had to be a way home. And he would find it, with or without the Federation's help. But first, he needed to understand exactly where he'd landed, and in Batman's experience, understanding meant investigation. The kind these people in their optimistic uniforms might not appreciate. If you want to see more characters enter different universes, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character and the universe you'd want to see them in down in the comments below. Live long and prosper. The Enterprise Bridge represented everything Gotham wasn't. Open, bright, and designed with the assumption that those who commanded here would face the unknown, with curiosity rather than paranoia. Captain Jean-Luc Picard rose from his command chair as Batman entered, flanked by Worf and two security officers who maintained respectful but ready positions. Picard's reputation as a diplomat and explorer had been built over decades, but the figure before him presented a challenge unlike any first contact scenario in Starfleet protocols. The armored vigilante moved with predatory grace, every gesture controlled, eyes constantly scanning the bridge crew and systems with analytical intensity that reminded Picard of data's processing speed applied to threat assessment. "Captain Jean-Luc Picard," he introduced himself, voice carrying the measured authority of someone accustomed to representing humanity's better nature. "Welcome aboard the Enterprise. Please, understand that you're not a prisoner here. We simply wish to understand your situation and offer assistance." Batman's white lenses fixed on Picard. Behind the cowl, Bruce Wayne's detective mind catalogued details: the captain's diplomatic bearing, the subtle deference crew members showed him, the way his hand rested near a console that likely controlled ship functions. A leader, genuinely. But leadership didn't guarantee trustworthiness. "Your sensors registered my arrival," Batman stated rather than asked. "What did they tell you?" Data swiveled from the ops station, his golden eyes showing fascination rather than fear. "The subspace distortion that preceded your materialization exhibited properties inconsistent with known spatial phenomena. The energy signature suggests a dimensional breach. You may have crossed from a parallel universe into our own." Parallel universe. Batman processed this. In Gotham, he'd encountered reality-warping metahumans, magic users, and time travelers. Dimensional travel wasn't beyond credibility. "Can you reverse the process? Send me back?" "Unknown," Data replied with perfect honesty. We would need to understand the mechanism that brought you here. The anomaly collapsed immediately after your arrival, leaving insufficient data for replication. Batman's jaw tightened behind the cowl. Stranded. The word carried weight he refused to show. Somewhere in Gotham, crime continued. The Joker plotted. Two-Face corrupted. And he was 70,000 light years, or infinite dimensions, away from protecting his city. Perhaps we should start with introductions, Picard suggested, moving closer with hands visible and non-threatening. You know who we are. May I ask who you are, what you do? I'm called Batman. He offered nothing more. Names were vulnerabilities. Bruce Wayne's identity remained his most guarded secret, protection for those few he allowed close. Batman, Picard repeated, studying the symbol on the armor. A vigilante name, I presume. Your equipment suggests military or law enforcement, yet you wear no insignia of any recognized organization. I work outside official channels. Batman's voice remained flat, offering minimal information. In my world, the systems meant to protect people often fail. I fill the gaps. Counselor Deanna Troi leaned forward from her seat beside the captain, her empathic abilities sensing layers beneath Batman's controlled exterior. You carry tremendous pain, she said softly, loss and anger channeled into purpose. You see yourself as necessary because you believe official institutions cannot be trusted. Batman's head turned toward her sharply. Stay out of my head. I'm not reading your thoughts, Troi explained gently. I'm Betazoid, an empath. I sense emotions, not specific memories. Your feelings are intense, disciplined, but intense. Captain, Worf interjected, his security training overriding diplomatic niceties. This individual operates as an unauthorized vigilante. His methods and equipment suggest he uses fear and intimidation. In Federation space, such activities would violate... We're not in Federation space to him, Mr. Worf, Picard interrupted. He's in our space. There's a distinction. He turned back to Batman. You mentioned your world has systems that fail. In the Federation, we've worked for centuries to build institutions based on cooperation, transparency, and the belief that sentient beings can govern themselves through reason and shared values. Batman's expression behind the cowl remained skeptical. I've heard that speech before. Different words, same sentiment. Idealism works until someone with resources and ruthlessness decides to exploit the system. And they always do. Then you've lived in a very different world than ours, Picard said, a note of sadness in his voice. I won't pretend the Federation is perfect. We've made mistakes, faced corruption, and struggled with our principles under pressure. But we've endured because we choose to believe in our better nature, not our worst. Belief doesn't stop a bullet. Batman's hand gestured toward his utility belt. Or whatever those energy weapons your crew carries can do. Preparation does. Planning. Being willing to do what others won't. And what is it you're willing to do? Picard asked directly. The bridge fell silent. Batman considered his answer carefully. These people had technology beyond anything in Gotham. Transporters that disassembled and reassembled matter. Faster than light travel. Energy weapons. They also had power he needed if he had any hope of returning home. But power came with strings, and he'd learned long ago that strings became chains if you weren't careful. Whatever is necessary to protect the innocent, Batman finally said. Within my code, which is, Picard pressed, I don't kill. Worf grunted something that might have been approval or skepticism. Riker leaned against the tactical console, arms crossed, studying this armored figure with the bearing of someone who'd seen too much darkness. Captain, Geordi's voice came through the comm system from engineering. I've been analyzing the residual energy signatures from the anomaly. If Batman's willing, I'd like to scan his equipment. His arrival might have left quantum impressions on his gear that could help us understand how to reverse the process. Batman's hand moved protectively toward his belt. His equipment wasn't just tools, it represented years of refinement, proprietary technology he'd designed himself. Letting unknown parties scan it meant revealing capabilities, vulnerabilities. "I'll provide limited access," Batman said after a pause, "but I maintain control of my equipment. No one touches it without my presence and permission." Picard nodded. "Agreed. Mr. LaForge, prepare to receive our guest in engineering. Commander Data, please accompany him and ensure he has access to our computer database regarding dimensional theory. If he's truly from another universe, he deserves to understand what that means." "Captain," Batman said, stopping Picard as the android rose. "In my experience, organizations that offer help unconditionally usually have conditions they're not mentioning. What does the Federation want from me?" Picard's expression showed something like disappointment that the question had been asked, but also understanding of why it had to be. The Federation wants what it has always wanted: to explore, to understand, and to offer friendship where possible. You're a guest here, Batman. An unusual one, certainly, but a guest nonetheless. We'll help you return home if we can. That's not conditional." Batman held the captain's gaze for a long moment, searching for deception and finding only earnest conviction. It unsettled him more than suspicion would have. People who believed this strongly in their ideals were either naive or dangerous, sometimes both. "I'll work with your engineers," Batman said. "But understand, Captain, I trust actions, not words, and I'll be watching." "I would expect nothing less," Picard replied. "Mr. Data, please escort our guest to engineering." As Batman left the bridge with the android, Troy spoke quietly to Picard. "He's never had allies he could fully trust, Captain. His entire worldview is built on self-reliance and expecting betrayal." "Then perhaps," Picard said thoughtfully, "exposure to the Federation will challenge those assumptions. Or perhaps his assumptions will challenge us. Either way, Counselor, I suspect this will be an educational experience for everyone involved." On the view screen, stars streaked past at warp speed, carrying the Enterprise deeper into Federation space. And in its corridors walked a dark knight who'd never learned to operate in the light. Engineering pulsed with controlled energy, the thrum of the warp core casting azure illumination across consoles where officers monitored matter-antimatter reactions that would have powered Gotham City for years. Batman followed Data through the organized chaos, his detective's mind cataloging everything. Power conduits, emergency protocols visible on wall displays, the casual efficiency of crew members who treated technology that could vaporize them with the comfort of routine familiarity. Geordi LaForge approached with an expression of barely contained curiosity, his visor scanning across spectrums Batman's cowl systems couldn't identify. "Fascinating," Geordi breathed. "Your armor's emitting residual tachyon particles and chronometric radiation. You didn't just travel through space, you crossed dimensional boundaries." "Can you reverse it?" Batman asked bluntly. "Maybe. Eventually." Geordi gestured toward a diagnostic table. "But I'll be honest with you. Dimensional physics isn't like changing a tire. We're talking about quantum entanglement across realities, subspace field manipulation at levels that would require technology we don't have. The anomaly that brought you here collapsed into itself, without knowing what created it in the first place." "I know what created it." Batman reached into his utility belt, producing a small cylindrical device that hummed with barely contained energy. Several security officers tensed, but Batman's posture remained non-threatening. The League of Assassins was weaponizing stolen technology. Some kind of quantum drill designed to breach dimensional barriers. I was investigating their facility when it activated. Data's positronic brain processed the implications instantly. You were attempting to prevent its use when you were caught in the breach. The device may have imprinted your quantum signature at the moment of activation. "Show off," Geordi muttered good-naturedly before addressing Batman. "Do you understand the science behind it?" "Enough to know it was dangerous. I'm not a physicist, but I recognize weapons-grade technology when I see it. In my world, people like Ra's al Ghul don't build dimensional drills for peaceful exploration." "Ra's al Ghul?" Data inquired. "Eco-terrorist, immortal. Believes humanity needs to be culled to save the planet." Batman's voice carried the weariness of someone who'd fought the same battles too many times. He's been trying to destroy civilization for centuries. The engineering crew exchanged uncomfortable glances. Geordi cleared his throat. "In the Federation, we encountered similar philosophies during first contact with various species. Usually through diplomacy and demonstrating sustainable alternatives, Diplomacy doesn't work with zealots," Batman interrupted. "Trust me, I've tried." "Perhaps your methods of diplomacy differ from ours," Data suggested without judgment. "Federation protocols emphasize understanding cultural context and addressing underlying motivations rather than simply opposing actions." Batman's jaw tightened behind the cowl. "I've addressed Ra's al Ghul's motivations multiple times, usually while he's trying to release bioweapons or detonate nuclear warheads. Some people can't be reasoned with, they can only be stopped." Before Data could respond, Batman moved to a console, his gauntleted fingers hovering over the controls. "How do I access your database? If I'm stuck here, I need information, star charts, political structures, technology limitations, everything." Geordi nodded to Data, who interfaced directly with the computer. "I am providing you guest access with Level 4 clearance. You will be able to access General Federation information, scientific databases, and cultural records. Classified Starfleet intelligence and tactical specifications remain restricted." Naturally. Batman's tone suggested he'd expected exactly that and would work around it when necessary. He spent the next hour absorbing information at a rate that impressed even Data. Federation history, the Klingon Empire, Romulan Star Empire, Cardassian Union, the Borg, Dominion. Each faction represented different threats, different methodologies, different strategic considerations. His detective's mind began constructing threat matrices, identifying vulnerabilities, planning contingencies. But as he read deeper, something troubled him. The Federation's philosophy of peaceful exploration, their prime directive of non-interference, their belief in diplomacy and understanding, it all felt dangerously naive. How many times had well-meaning idealism in Gotham enabled corruption? How many criminals had exploited the system's belief in rehabilitation only to continue destroying lives? "Data," Batman said without looking up from the screen displaying information about Section 31, a notation marked with security restrictions, but visible enough to know it existed. "What's Section 31? Data and Geordi exchanged loaded glances. "I am not authorized to discuss classified Starfleet operations," Data replied carefully. Batman's eyes narrowed. "So the Federation has a covert intelligence division that operates outside official channels. Interesting. Your captain talks about transparency, but you keep secrets like everyone else." "The Federation contains billions of individuals across hundreds of worlds," Data said. "Philosophical ideals do not always align perfectly with practical necessities. However, unlike your description of institutional failure in your world, our systems include accountability mechanisms designed to prevent abuse." "Designed to prevent it?" Batman turned to face the android. "But do they succeed?" Data's hesitation spoke volumes. Not always. Then we're not so different. Batman turned back to the console, now searching for information about subspace physics and dimensional theory. If these people couldn't send him home immediately, he'd learn to do it himself. Geordi watched the vigilante work, impressed despite reservations. You process information like data. Are you enhanced? Human, Batman replied. Trained. I've spent my life mastering skills others consider impossible. Pattern recognition, deductive reasoning, strategic planning. My mind is my greatest weapon. In the Federation, we call that intellectual diversity, Geordi said. We celebrate. An alarm cut through engineering's ambient hum. Geordi rushed to a console as data streamed across displays. Captain, we've got a situation. Long-range sensors are detecting unusual subspace fluctuations in Sector 2527. Identical signature to the anomaly that brought Batman here. Picard's voice crackled through communications. On screen, Mr. LaForge. The engineering monitors shifted to display sensor data. Energy readings spiking across dimensional barriers, reality literally tearing at the edges. But this time, the breach wasn't collapsing. It was stabilizing, growing. Something's coming through, Geordi said, his visor tracking quantum flux. Multiple signatures, not people, objects. Technology. Batman moved beside him, his tactical computer syncing with the display through Data's interface. His expression behind the cowl darkened as recognition flashed across his features. Those energy signatures, I've seen them before. Where? Data asked. The League of Assassins facility. The quantum drill had components with identical harmonic frequencies. Batman's fists clenched. They're following me, or they're using the dimensional breach I created to expand operations into this universe. Captain, Geordi called out. The objects are weapons platforms, automated, and they're powering up. Picard's command carried instantly. Red alert. All hands to battle stations. Raise shields. Mr. Worf, tactical analysis. But Batman was already moving, accessing ship schematics through Data's console link. His mind raced through possibilities. Automated weapons suggested remote operation or pre-programmed targeting. If the League had sent assets through the breach, they'd be designed for one purpose: establishing a foothold for dimensional invasion. Captain, Batman's voice cut through the bridge communications. Those platforms won't negotiate. They're designed to eliminate resistance and secure territory. If they establish themselves in Federation space, you'll have an invasion force that knows no mercy and follows a leader who sees genocide as planetary preservation. Then we'll have to stop them before they establish any foothold, Picard replied. Mr. Data, return to the bridge immediately. Batman, I suggest you remain in engineering where it's... I don't hide during fights. Batman was already heading for the turbolift. Data, where's your tactical operations center? If those platforms operate like League technology, I know their vulnerabilities. Data's golden eyes showed calculation. Captain, Batman's knowledge could prove valuable. I recommend allowing him access to auxiliary tactical. A pause, then Picard's voice, reluctant but pragmatic. Granted, but Batman, you follow Commander Worf's orders. This isn't Gotham. This is my ship, and on the Enterprise, we don't use methods that compromise our principles. Batman stepped into the turbolift beside Data, his expression unreadable behind the cowl. Captain, if you want to save lives, you might need to compromise some principles. It's not pretty, but it's effective. We'll see, Picard said. Bridge, out. As the turbolift ascended, Data observed Batman with android curiosity. You believe Captain Picard's adherence to ethical conduct during combat situations is a weakness. I believe good people die when leaders hesitate to make hard choices. And yet you yourself maintain a code against killing. Is that not a limitation during combat? Batman's jaw tightened. It's a line that separates me from the people I fight. Without it, I'm just another monster with better intentions. Data processed this. A philosophical boundary that defines identity rather than strategic advantage. Fascinating. You prioritize maintaining your ethical framework over tactical efficiency, yet criticize others for the same behavior. It's different when it's your own code versus someone else's, Batman growled. Is it? Data asked simply. The turbolift doors opened before Batman could respond, revealing a corridor already bathed in red alert lighting. Outside the Enterprise, in the vast darkness of space, weapons platforms bristled with technology that shouldn't exist in this universe. And somewhere, perhaps light years away or dimensions apart, Ra's al Ghul smiled. Batman had brought his war to a universe unprepared for it. Now he'd have to teach them how to fight, or watch their idealism burn. The bridge had transformed into a command theater. Officers moved with disciplined urgency across stations, while the main view screen displayed 3 angular weapons platforms that hung in space like metallic predators, their surfaces covered in esoteric symbols Batman recognized from League of Assassins compounds. Each platform bristled with energy weapons that glowed with the same quantum signatures as the dimensional drill. Batman entered Auxiliary Tactical beside the main bridge, where tactical displays covered 3 walls with real-time sensor data. Worf turned from his console, his Klingon features set in grim assessment. The platforms have locked weapons on our position. They are not responding to hails. They won't. Batman's fingers flew across an available console, his cowl's interface adapting to Starfleet systems with uncomfortable ease. The League's technology and Federation's shared enough quantum principles that his computer could translate. League platforms operate on predetermined target algorithms. They identify threats and eliminate them. No communication protocols. Firing solution ready, Worf reported to Picard. Awaiting your orders, Captain. Picard sat in his command chair, fingers steepled, studying the platforms. Hold fire, Mr. Worf. They haven't attacked yet. Batman, you're certain they can't be reasoned with? Positive. They're machines following programming written by someone who believes 7 billion people is 6 billion too many. Batman pulled up schematics from memory, sketching the platform's probable internal structure onto the tactical display. But they have weaknesses. The power cores operate on quantum entanglement. They're linked to a central command node that's likely still in my universe. Sever that connection, they go dormant. How do we sever a dimensional link? Riker asked. You disrupt their subspace harmonics with a precisely modulated energy pulse. Your phasers should do it if you target the quantum field generators, here, here, and here. Batman highlighted 3 locations on each platform. Worf studied the tactical projection, his warrior's instinct appreciating the strategic analysis. Precise shots. The generators are protected by overlapping defensive fields. Then you get past the defenses. Batman's tone suggested this was obvious. At this range, against unknown shield frequencies, the probability of successful penetration is insufficient, data reported from Ops. We would need to reduce distance to 300,000 kilometers to ensure targeting precision. That puts us well within their weapons range, Worf said with something approaching approval. The Klingon respected enemies who demanded risk. Picard stood, moving closer to the view screen. Batman, if we fail to disable these platforms with your method, what's their next action? They'll establish a perimeter, send data back through the dimensional breach, and begin strategic analysis of targets. Within 48 hours, more platforms will arrive. Within a week, you'll have an invasion force. Ra's al Ghul doesn't do anything small. If he's sending assets into a new universe, he's planning to save it by destroying most of the population. The bridge crew absorbed this with varying expressions of disbelief and horror. Troy spoke quietly from her seat. You've fought this enemy for years. The emotions behind your words. You've lost people to him. Batman's silence confirmed what his voice wouldn't. Captain, sensors detect energy buildup in all 3 platforms, Data announced. They are preparing to fire. Evasive maneuvers heading 17 Mark IV, Picard commanded. Mr. Worf, return fire. Target their weapons arrays, disable but don't destroy. The Enterprise banked gracefully as orange energy beams lanced through space where they'd been seconds before. The ship's phaser banks responded with crimson streams that splashed against the platform's shields. The viewscreen showed the barriers holding firm, absorbing and dissipating the Federation's weapons fire. Their shields are adapting to our phaser frequencies, Worf growled. Minimal damage. Batman watched the tactical display, his mind calculating angles and power distribution. They're using rotating harmonics, same defensive pattern the League uses for their compounds. Geordi, can you modulate your phasers through multiple frequencies simultaneously? Geordi's voice came through from engineering. Theoretically, yes, but it would take time to... You don't have time. Batman pointed at the viewscreen where the platforms were repositioning, their movements coordinated despite no visible communication. They're flanking, classic League tactical doctrine. Divide the target's attention. Strike from multiple vectors. Picard's expression remained calm, but his voice carried command authority. Suggestions, Batman? Stop trying to disable them gently. Hit them hard enough that their shields collapse, then target the quantum generators before they regenerate defenses. That could destroy the platforms entirely, Picard countered. If there's technology there that could help us understand the dimensional breach. Captain, with respect, you're thinking like an explorer when you need to think like someone defending their territory. Batman moved beside Picard, his armored presence a dark contrast to the Enterprise's bright bridge. Those platforms will kill your crew if given the chance. Preservation of life outweighs scientific curiosity. Mr. Worf, quantum torpedoes, full spread, Picard ordered. Target all 3 platforms simultaneously. Data, coordinate firing solution. Aye, Captain. Worf's fingers flew across tactical controls with obvious satisfaction. The Enterprise's torpedo launchers discharged 6 quantum torpedoes, pairs targeting each platform with precision, data calculated down to microseconds. The projectiles crossed space in brilliant blue arcs, slamming into the platform's shields with combined force that overwhelmed their adaptive defenses. Shields down on all 3 targets, Worf reported. Geordi, now, Batman commanded before Picard could. Modulated phaser burst targeting the quantum generators. You'll have maybe 3 seconds before their shields regenerate. Picard looked at Batman sharply. The vigilante had given orders on his bridge without permission, but the tactical situation demanded action, not protocol disputes. Do it, Mr. LaForge. The Enterprise's main phaser array split into 3 focused beams, each cycling through frequencies as they struck the exposed platforms. Batman's highlighted targets erupted in cascading quantum failures, the generators overloaded, their dimensional links severing in pulses of exotic energy that made the viewscreen filters compensate against brightness. Direct hits, data confirmed. Quantum field generators destroyed. The platforms are going dormant. Residual power only. The weapons platforms drifted in space, their lights dimming, their targeting systems offline. The bridge crew released collective breath. Riker turned to Batman with grudging respect. You called that perfectly. I've fought the League for years. You learn their patterns or you die. Batman moved toward the view screen, studying the disabled platforms. But this is just the advance guard. Ra's al Ghul sent these through to test dimensional stability and defensive response. He knows now that this universe has organized military forces with advanced technology that will inform his next move. "What do you suggest?" Picard asked, his tone making clear he was asking for information, not ceding command. Before Batman could answer, a figure materialized on the bridge in a shimmer of transporter effect. Not Starfleet uniform, civilian clothes, nondescript, forgettable. Male, middle-aged, with eyes that held calculation, Batman recognized from intelligence operatives in his own world. Worf's hand moved to his phaser. "Security alert! Unauthorized transport to the bridge!" The man raised his hand slowly, showing no weapons. "Stand down, Lieutenant. I'm not here to cause trouble." "Identify yourself," Picard demanded, rising from his chair. "Director Sloan, Special Investigations, Section 31. The man's eyes fixed on Batman with unsettling familiarity, as if he'd been studying him. "I've been monitoring your situation with considerable interest. An interdimensional vigilante with knowledge of an invasion force arriving just as that force tests our borders. Quite the coincidence." Batman's stance shifted subtly into combat readiness. "I've dealt with intelligence agencies before. Usually when they show up uninvited, it means they want something that benefits them more than it helps anyone else." Sloan smiled without warmth. "Direct. I appreciate that. Yes, Batman. I know who you are, what you do, and why you're dangerous to conventional thinking. Section 31 exists because sometimes the Federation's ideals require protection from threats those ideals prevent us from officially acknowledging. Captain, this man is not authorized to be on my bridge," Worf stated, phaser now drawn. "Put the weapon away, Lieutenant," Sloan said calmly. "I'm here because what's happening now threatens more than one starship. If these platforms represent an invasion force from another dimension, the Federation needs information. More importantly, we need someone who understands how these enemies think." His gaze never left Batman. "Someone willing to operate outside the Prime Directive and official protocols when necessary." Picard's voice carried ice. "Mr. Sloan, Section 31's operations exist in a legal gray area at best. I'll not have you recruiting on my ship without proper authorization." "Captain Picard, with all due respect, your authorization isn't required for this conversation." Sloan stepped toward Batman, ignoring Worf's threatening posture. "You don't trust the Federation, do you? You see their idealism as weakness. You believe in preparation, in doing what's necessary rather than what's comfortable. Section 31 shares that philosophy." "I work alone," Batman said flatly. "Not anymore. You're in a universe where you lack resources, intelligence networks, and backup. I'm offering you access to Starfleet's classified databases, tactical intelligence on every major power in the quadrant, and support for operations the Federation can't officially acknowledge." Sloan's smile turned knowing. "In exchange, you help us stop this dimensional invasion before it begins, using whatever methods work, not whatever methods satisfy diplomatic sensibilities." Batman studied Sloan with the same intensity he'd used on Gotham's criminal masterminds. The offer was logical, pragmatic, and exactly what someone in his position needed, which made it dangerous. In his experience, offers that seemed perfect usually came with hidden costs. "What's the catch?" Batman asked. "No catch. Mutual benefit. We get your expertise. You get resources to protect this universe and potentially find a way home. Everyone wins." "Captain," Batman turned to Picard, "what do you know about this organization?" Picard's expression showed distaste. "Section 31 claims to protect the Federation through covert action. They operate without oversight, without accountability." Their methods include assassination, biological warfare, and manipulation of foreign governments. They are everything the Federation claims not to be. So they're effective, Batman concluded. They're dangerous, Picard corrected. Power without accountability corrupts absolutely. The Federation endures because we hold ourselves to principles, even when they're difficult. Section 31 represents the belief that ends justify means, a philosophy that leads to atrocity. Sloane's expression never wavered. The captain speaks from his comfortable command chair, protected by officers who follow orders in a Federation secured by peace that someone had to fight for. Batman, you know better. You've seen what happens when good people refuse to make hard choices. This universe faces an existential threat from your world. Will you help us stop it? Or will you let Captain Picard's idealism doom billions because he won't dirty his hands? The bridge fell silent. Every officer watched Batman, waiting to see which philosophy he'd embrace, Picard's principled restraint or Sloane's pragmatic ruthlessness. In Gotham, Batman had always operated between these extremes, walking a line that kept him human while allowing him to combat inhuman evil. But this wasn't Gotham, and the stakes were higher than one city. Batman's voice emerged quiet, controlled, and absolutely final. I'll work with you, Sloane. But understand something. I've dealt with intelligence agencies that thought they could control me. They were wrong. I follow my code, not yours. The moment you cross lines I won't cross. We're done. Acceptable, Sloane said immediately. I'll brief you on current threats and provide intelligence access. Captain Picard, thank you for your hospitality. He touched a device on his wrist. Wait, Picard commanded. Batman, you're making a mistake. Section 31 will use you, compromise you. Captain, Batman interrupted, I've spent my entire life being used by people who thought they were smarter than me. I know what I'm doing. Sloane and Batman dematerialized in a transporter shimmer, leaving the Enterprise bridge in stunned silence. Troy spoke first, her empathic senses troubled. Captain, his emotions during that exchange. He genuinely believes this is necessary, but he's also deeply conflicted. Some part of him knows this is dangerous. Then why did he go? Riker asked. Because, Picard said quietly, staring at the space where Batman had stood. He spent his entire life in a world where trust was punished and paranoia was rewarded. We offered him ideals. Section 31 offered him tools. He turned to his crew. And now a dark night has allied with the Federation's darkest secret. God help us all. On the view screen, the dormant platforms drifted, and somewhere in a classified facility, a vigilante and a spy master began planning for a war between universes. The Section 31 facility existed in the gap between official Starfleet installations, a station hidden within an asteroid field in the Calandra sector, its presence scrubbed from all but the most classified databases. Batman materialized in a sterile briefing room where holographic displays surrounded a central tactical table showing real-time intelligence from across Federation space and beyond. Sloane gestured to the displays with proprietary pride. Welcome to the sharp end of Federation security. From here, we monitor threats that Starfleet Command pretends don't exist. Romulan infiltration networks, Cardassian Obsidian Order operations, Dominion spy cells still active after the war. And now, your League of Assassins. Batman moved to the tactical table, his cowl systems interfacing with the holographic projections. Data streamed across his heads-up display. Intelligence reports, surveillance footage, intercepted communications. His detective's mind absorbed patterns, connections, vulnerabilities. You've been tracking the dimensional platforms since before they emerged. We detected subspace fluctuations 3 days ago, Sloane confirmed. Quantum signatures that didn't match any known phenomenon. When your anomaly appeared on the Enterprise's sensors, we connected the patterns. Someone from another universe was testing dimensional boundaries. We just didn't know who until you provided context. Ra's al Ghul. Batman pulled up the tactical display showing the 3 dormant platforms. These were reconnaissance assets. He's measuring this universe's defensive capabilities, technological level, and response time. Standard League doctrine: gather intelligence before committing forces. Sloane nodded. Which gives us a window. If he's still in the reconnaissance phase, we can prepare defensive measures, identify how he's maintaining the dimensional breach, and close it permanently before invasion forces arrive. It's not that simple. Batman's fingers manipulated the holographic interface, pulling up schematics from memory. The quantum drill that brought me here was one of 6 the League had constructed. If Ra's is committing resources to dimensional expansion, he'll activate all 6 simultaneously, creating multiple breach points across this universe. You won't be able to defend everywhere at once. Then we need to strike at the source. Sloane leaned forward, his expression intent. Can you identify where in your universe these drills are located? Batman's jaw tightened. I was investigating one facility when the breach activated. The League has compounds on every continent. They operate through shell corporations, hidden monasteries, underground installations. Finding them all would take months even with my resources, without access to Earth's information networks. What if I told you we've detected another anomaly forming? Sloane pulled up sensor data showing subspace distortions coalescing near the Romulan neutral zone. Different location, same quantum signature. This breach is larger, more stable. If it fully manifests, how long? Batman demanded. 18 hours, maybe less. Batman studied the projection, his tactical computer calculating probabilities. The neutral zone represented one of the quadrant's most volatile regions. Romulan territory bordered Federation space, with the treaty that separated them enforced through mutual deterrence rather than trust. A dimensional breach opening there would attract attention from both powers, potentially sparking conflicts that could escalate into war. The Romulans will investigate, Batman said. They'll see it as either a Federation weapon or an opportunity to exploit. Either way, they'll interfere. Precisely why Starfleet Command won't authorize direct action. Sending ships into the neutral zone violates treaty provisions. Captain Picard would need to petition the Federation Council, file diplomatic protests, negotiate with the Romulan Senate. A process that takes weeks while the breach stabilizes and your friend Ra's sends through whatever forces he's prepared. So you want me to go in covertly? Batman turned to face Sloane directly. Cross into Romulan space, investigate the breach, and close it without triggering an interstellar incident. I want you to do what you do best. Operate outside official channels to protect people who'll never know you saved them. Sloane's expression showed calculated sincerity. We'll provide you with a modified runabout, equipped with cloaking technology, intelligence on Romulan patrol patterns, and technical specifications for disrupting dimensional breaches. You get in, you shut down the breach before it fully manifests, and you get out. Batman's eyes narrowed behind the cowl's white lenses. And if I encounter Romulan forces? Avoid them. But if confrontation becomes unavoidable, use your discretion. Section 31 doesn't operate under the same rules of engagement as Starfleet. We trust our operatives to make difficult decisions in the field. There it was, the implicit permission to use whatever methods worked, regardless of Federation principles. Batman had heard similar speeches from Amanda Waller, from Nick Fury, from every intelligence director who'd tried to recruit him for morally ambiguous operations. They always started with noble goals and ended with compromises that eroded the line between hero and villain. But the alternative was allowing Ra's al Ghul to establish a foothold in this universe. How many billions lived in Federation space? How many worlds would burn if the League's eco-fascist philosophy spread unchecked? I'll need access to your intelligence on Romulan technology, Batman said. Their weapons capabilities, shield frequencies, surveillance methods. If I'm going into their territory, I need to know what I'm facing. Already compiled. Sloan handed Batman a data isolinear chip. Everything we know about the Romulan military, current, as of 6 hours ago. I'm also assigning you a technical specialist, someone who understands dimensional physics and can help you identify the breach's power source. I work alone. Not on this. You don't know our technology well enough yet. The specialist is non-negotiable. Batman considered arguing, then recognized the logic. Pride was a luxury he couldn't afford when operating in an unfamiliar universe with technology he'd only begun understanding. Fine, but they follow my lead. I'm not commanding a team, they're support. Understood. Sloan activated a communication panel. Send her in. The briefing room door slid open, admitting a Vulcan woman in civilian clothes rather than Starfleet uniform. She moved with controlled grace, her expression showing typical Vulcan composure as she studied Batman with analytical detachment. Lieutenant Tival, Sloan introduced, formerly Starfleet Sciences, specializing in subspace mechanics and dimensional theory. She volunteered for Section 31 service after the Dominion War when she concluded that Federation idealism insufficient protected against existential threats. Tival raised her hand in the Vulcan salute. Live long and prosper, Batman. I have reviewed your case file and the intelligence regarding the League of Assassins' dimensional incursion. Your assessment of their tactical doctrine appears logical. I anticipate a productive working relationship. Batman studied her through his cowl sensors. Vulcan physiology, increased strength, advanced mental disciplines, touch telepathy. Her body language suggested combat training beyond standard Starfleet protocols. Section 31 wouldn't have assigned her without confidence in her capabilities. Can you identify and disable a quantum drill maintaining a dimensional breach? Batman asked directly. If provided adequate sensor data and access to the mechanism, yes. Dimensional breaches operate on principles of quantum entanglement and subspace field manipulation. Disrupting the harmonic frequencies that stabilize the breach should cause cascade failure, sealing the dimensional barrier. Should. The theoretical models are sound. Practical application may present variables requiring adaptive problem solving. Tival's head tilted slightly. I understand you possess considerable expertise in adaptive problem solving through what your culture terms detective work. Our skill sets complement each other logically. Batman turned back to Sloan. When do we leave? Immediately. The runabout is prepped in Bay 3. Tival will handle piloting and technical operations. You focus on tactical planning and any necessary direct action. Sloan's expression hardened. Batman, understand that if you're captured by the Romulans, Section 31 will deny all knowledge of this operation. The Federation will not negotiate for your release. You'll be on your own. I'm always on my own, Batman said. That's how I work best. As Batman and Tival left the briefing room, Sloan watched them go with satisfaction. The Dark Knight didn't realize it yet, but every operation he conducted for Section 31, every moral compromise he made in the name of protecting this universe, would bind him closer to their methods. Eventually, he'd become exactly what they needed, a weapon without the restraints of Federation idealism. In the corridor, Tival walked beside Batman in silence until they reached the turbo lift. You do not trust Director Sloan, she observed. It wasn't a question. Should I? Logic suggests no. Section 31's operational history includes manipulation of assets, elimination of personnel who become liabilities, and prioritization of organizational objectives over individual welfare. Taval's expression remained neutral. However, their goals often align with optimal outcomes for Federation security. The dichotomy presents philosophical complexity. In my experience, organizations that operate without oversight eventually become the threat they claim to fight. Yet you have allied with them. Batman's jaw tightened, temporarily, until the immediate threat is neutralized. A logical distinction, Taval said as the turbo lift doors opened, though I calculate a 73% probability that Director Sloan anticipates your eventual departure and has contingency plans to either retain your services or eliminate you as a security risk. Batman looked at the Vulcan woman sharply. And you're telling me this because? Because efficiency in our mission requires transparent communication of risk assessment. If you are aware of Director Sloan's probable intentions, you can incorporate countermeasures into your planning. Taval entered the turbo lift. Also, I find Federation hypocrisy regarding Section 31 illogical. They benefit from our operations while maintaining moral superiority through plausible deniability. You, at least, acknowledge the moral ambiguity of your choices. I respect that honesty. As the turbo lift descended toward the shuttle bay, Batman considered his new partner, a Vulcan who'd abandoned Starfleet idealism for Section 31's pragmatism, yet maintained enough independent thinking to warn him about their employer's probable betrayal. She was either the most valuable asset he'd gained in this universe, or the most dangerous threat. In Gotham, that kind of uncertainty would have made him refuse the partnership. But this wasn't Gotham, and time was running out. Taval, Batman said as they walked toward the waiting runabout. When this mission is over, we're going to have a conversation about exactly what Section 31 expects from us, and what we're willing to give them. Logical, Taval agreed. But first, we prevent a dimensional invasion. Priorities must be maintained. The runabout's systems hummed to life as they boarded. A compact vessel designed for covert operations, its hull plating adapted for minimal sensor signature and equipped with Romulan cloaking technology that officially didn't exist in Federation arsenals. Within minutes, they were launching from the hidden station, heading toward the neutral zone and a dimensional breach that threatened to unleash eco-terrorist zealots on an unprepared universe. Batman settled into the co-pilot seat, his mind already running through tactical scenarios. Ra's al Ghul had pursued immortality for centuries. Now he'd found an entire universe to reshape according to his vision. Stopping him would require more than Federation diplomacy or Section 31 manipulation. It would require a Dark Knight willing to operate in shadows even darker than Gotham's. The Romulan neutral zone existed as a testament to mutual distrust, a buffer of empty space where neither Federation nor Romulan vessels could legally operate without triggering treaty violations that could escalate into war. Taval guided their cloaked runabout through the zone with Vulcan precision, her fingers dancing across navigation controls as she avoided sensor buoys and automated defense platforms that both sides officially denied deploying. Batman studied tactical displays showing the dimensional breach's location, a region of space near a dead planetary system whose sun had collapsed into a white dwarf millennia ago. The abandoned worlds provided perfect cover for covert operations, which explained why Ra's had chosen this location. The League always selected staging grounds where interference would be minimal. Sensor readings indicate the breach is 47% stabilized, Taval reported, her voice maintaining clinical detachment. At current progression rates, full manifestation will occur in 14 hours, 16 minutes. However, I am detecting unexpected energy signatures near the breach coordinates. Batman leaned forward, his cowl's enhanced vision processing the sensor data. What kind of signatures? Romulan warbird, Dideradex class, It is maintaining position 300,000 kilometers from the breach, conducting what appears to be intensive scanning operations. Taval's fingers moved across her console. They detected the subspace anomaly and dispatched a reconnaissance vessel. Logical response to unknown phenomenon appearing near their border. Can they see us through the cloak? Improbable. This cloaking device utilizes technology acquired through unofficial channels. It operates on different principles than standard Romulan cloaks, making detection unlikely unless we engage active scanning or weapons systems. Taval glanced at Batman. However, approaching the breach while the warbird maintains surveillance position presents complications. They will observe any action we take against the dimensional anomaly. Batman's tactical mind ran through scenarios. The Romulan Star Empire operated on principles of calculated aggression and strategic deception, qualities he understood intimately from dealing with Gotham's crime families. The Warbird's commander would be gathering intelligence, assessing whether the breach represented Federation weapon development, natural phenomenon, or opportunity for exploitation. "What's their weapons status?" Batman asked. "Disruptor banks powered but not locked on any target. Plasma torpedo launchers in standby configuration. Their shields are at minimum strength. They do not anticipate immediate threat." Taval's eyebrow raised fractionally. "Are you considering engaging a Romulan warbird? That would constitute exceptionally poor tactical judgment." "I'm considering options." Batman pulled up the warbird specifications from Section 31's database. The Dideridex-class vessels were massive, over 1,300 meters long, with firepower sufficient to obliterate their small runabout in seconds. Direct confrontation wasn't viable, but confrontation didn't always mean direct engagement. "Can you replicate the quantum signature of the League's weapons platforms?" Batman asked. Taval's expression showed the Vulcan equivalent of intrigue. "Theoretically, yes. Our sensors recorded detailed specifications when the Enterprise encountered the platforms. With proper calibration, I could generate a subspace pulse mimicking their energy signature. However, the purpose of such deception is unclear. The Romulans are watching the breach because they don't understand what it is. If we make them think weapons platforms are emerging, like the ones that attacked the Enterprise, they'll respond with force. While they're engaged with phantom threats, we approach the breach and disable it. You propose using Romulan military aggression as tactical diversion." Taval's head tilted slightly. "Efficient. However, it requires manipulating the Romulans into firing on targets that do not exist, potentially escalating their alert status and drawing additional vessels to this location, which gives us a narrow window before reinforcements arrive. We take it." Taval's fingers paused over her console. "This deception violates several Federation principles regarding honest interaction with other species. Captain Picard would consider it morally dubious." "Captain Picard isn't here, and I'm not Federation." Batman's voice carried the weight of too many nights manipulating Gotham's criminal underworld through fear and misdirection. Sometimes the right choice isn't the honest one. Sometimes it's the one that saves lives by making someone else the distraction. "Logical from a utilitarian perspective," Taval acknowledged. "Though I calculate a 38% probability that this operation results in our destruction if variables deviate from projected outcomes. I've worked with worse odds." Taval studied Batman for a moment, her Vulcan control unable to completely mask curiosity. "In your universe, you operated as a vigilante outside legal authority. You made tactical decisions without oversight or accountability, yet you maintained ethical boundaries, your code against killing. This suggests internal moral conflict between pragmatic necessity and philosophical principle. Fascinating." "It's not fascinating, it's survival. Batman turned back to the tactical display. If I become like the people I fight, I lose the only thing that makes the mission matter. But that doesn't mean I play fair. It means I play smart enough to win without crossing the line. And where is that line in this scenario? Batman's jaw tightened. We're not killing anyone. The Romulans will fire on false targets, realize they've been deceived, and withdraw to report to their command. No casualties. We disable the breach and leave before they return. Clean operation. Unless they detect us during the operation, or identify our vessel's quantum signature, or decide to investigate the breach's power source simultaneously with our approach. Taval's tone remained even. Variables exist beyond our control. Romulan commanders are trained in tactical improvisation. They will not behave predictably. No one ever does, Batman said. That's why you adapt. Generate the false signatures. Multiple targets emerging from the breach in attack formation. Make them look aggressive. Taval's fingers resumed their work across the console. Calibrating subspace pulse generator. Phantom targets will manifest in 47 seconds. I recommend we use the Romulans' engagement window to approach the breach from their sensor shadow. They will be focused on the false threats, creating a blind spot we can exploit. Batman nodded, his cowl's targeting systems syncing with the runabout's navigation. This was familiar territory, using an enemy's attention against them, moving through blind spots created by their own threat assessment. Gotham had taught him that people saw what they expected to see. The Romulans expected weapons platforms emerging from the breach. He'd give them exactly that expectation. The subspace around the dimensional breach rippled with artificial energy signatures. On the Romulan warbird sensors, 3 contacts would be appearing, identical quantum profiles to the platforms that had attacked the Enterprise, positioning themselves in aggressive formation. Taval's console chimed. Romulan vessel is responding. They have raised shields and are charging weapons, sensor focus shifting toward phantom targets. Take us in, Batman commanded. Low power, minimal emissions. Stay in their sensor shadow. The runabout moved like a predator stalking prey, silent, controlled, using the massive warbird's own bulk to mask their approach. Through the view screen, Batman watched the dimensional breach grow larger, a tear in space-time that shimmered with unstable quantum energy, its edges crackling with exotic particles that made the runabout's sensors struggle for coherent readings. Romulans are firing, Taval reported with clinical precision. Green disruptor beams lanced through space toward the phantom platforms. The energy passed through the false signatures harmlessly, but the Romulans would need several seconds to realize their targets weren't solid. Seconds Batman intended to use. There, he pointed to a structure near the breach's epicenter, a metallic framework hovering in space, covered in the same esoteric symbols he'd seen on the League's quantum drill in Gotham. That's the stabilization apparatus. Can you scan its power source? Taval's hands flew across sensors. Confirmed. The device operates on quantum entanglement principles, maintaining connection to power sources in your universe. It is drawing energy through the dimensional breach itself, using the connection to sustain and expand the opening. Her eyebrow raised. Elegant engineering. Whoever designed this understood subspace mechanics at levels comparable to Federation expertise. Roz has resources across centuries, Batman said grimly. He's recruited scientists, engineers, and visionaries for his crusade. People who believe they're saving the world by helping him destroy most of it. He studied the framework structure. How do we shut it down? Multiple approaches exist. We could destroy the framework with weapons fire, though that risks destabilizing the breach catastrophically. The energy release could affect subspace integrity across several light years. Alternatively, we could board the structure and manually disrupt its quantum entanglement, severing the dimensional connection and allowing the breach to collapse naturally. Which is safer? Neither option is safe by conventional definitions. However, manual disruption provides greater control over the breach's closure and reduces probability of collateral damage to nearby spatial phenomena. Batman unbuckled from his seat. Then we board it. Can you maintain position while I'm on the structure? Affirmative. However, I should accompany you. Quantum entanglement disruption requires precise calibration. Error margins of 0.03% could result in catastrophic failure. Fine. Both of us go. Set proximity alarms for the Warbird. If they move toward our position, we need immediate warning. Tuval secured the runabout's systems and retrieved equipment from storage, tricorders, emergency transporter armbands, and a phaser she checked with practiced efficiency. Batman watched her preparations with approval. She moved like someone trained for field operations, not just laboratory work. They donned environment suits designed for short-duration vacuum exposure and activated personal transporter armbands. Tuval programmed coordinates for the stabilization framework, her fingers steady despite the mission's inherent dangers. "Ready?" she asked. Batman's hand rested on his utility belt, feeling the familiar weight of gadgets he'd adapted for this universe's physics. "Ready." The transporter effect took them both, dematerializing them from the runabout's cabin and rematerializing on the League's dimensional framework. Batman's boots locked onto the metallic surface using magnetic seals as he took in their surroundings. The structure stretched across hundreds of meters, a geometric lattice of exotic alloys surrounding the breach's glowing center. Energy cascaded through crystalline nodes that pulsed with the same quantum signature as Ra's al Ghul's technology. Through the breach itself, Batman could see distortions, glimpses of another reality bleeding through, shadows of his own universe visible through the dimensional tear. There, Tuval pointed to a central control nexus where data streams converged. That node coordinates the entanglement fields. If we can access its programming and introduce harmonic dissonance, the quantum connection will destabilize. Batman moved toward the nexus with Tuval following. Around them, the breach pulsed with increasing intensity. Through his cowl's sensors, he detected quantum fluctuations growing stronger. The breach was approaching full stabilization. Within hours, League forces could begin crossing over in numbers that would overwhelm any defensive response. Tuval opened an access panel, revealing crystalline circuits that operated on principles beyond conventional technology. Her tricorder scanned the systems, analyzing quantum pathways and entanglement matrices. Fascinating. This technology combines dimensional physics with what appears to be biological computing. The circuits are partially organic. Lazarus Pit technology, Batman said grimly, recognizing the telltale signs of the mystical pools Ra's used to extend his life. He's merged chemistry with quantum mechanics. That's how he's maintaining stable dimensional entanglement. The Lazarus Pit energy provides a living connection between universes. Then, disrupting it requires more than simply severing quantum links. We must introduce energy that destabilizes the biological component. Tuval looked at Batman. "Do you possess knowledge of this Lazarus Pit technology? Enough to know it's unstable. It grants life, but at the cost of sanity if misused. Ra's has mastered it over centuries, but the pits still react unpredictably to certain chemicals and energy frequencies." Batman accessed his utility belt, retrieving several pellets filled with compounds he'd developed to counter Lazarus Pit effects in his own universe. These should disrupt the biological circuits. Combined with your quantum dissonance. Tuval's expression shifted slightly. The closest a Vulcan came to alarm. "Batman, the Romulan warbird is changing course. They have detected our presence on the framework." Through the breach's glow, Batman saw the massive Dideridex-class warbird turning toward them, its weapons arrays powering up. They'd taken too long. The Romulans had realized the Phantom platforms were false and had begun scanning for the real threat. Now that threat was them. The Romulan warbird moved with predatory intent, its weapons arrays tracking toward the dimensional framework where Batman and Taval stood exposed. Through his cowl's enhanced optics, Batman calculated firing solutions. The warbird's disruptors could vaporize their position in seconds, and their runabout lacked shields strong enough to withstand sustained assault. "They are hailing us on all frequencies," Taval reported, her tricorder detecting the communication attempts. "Standard Romulan military protocol. Identify yourself or be destroyed. We have approximately 30 seconds before they open fire." Batman's mind raced through tactical options. Fighting was impossible. They were two people with hand weapons against a warship crewed by hundreds. Fleeing meant abandoning the mission and allowing the breach to fully stabilize. Negotiation would require explaining their presence in the neutral zone, conducting covert operations, triggering the exact interstellar incident they were meant to prevent. "Can we finish the disruption before they fire?" Batman asked. Taval's hands flew across her tricorder. Not with sufficient certainty. The quantum matrices require precise calibration. Under combat pressure, error probability increases to 74%. Catastrophic failure would destroy us and potentially collapse local subspace, Batman finished. He'd faced similar scenarios in Gotham, missions where every option led to failure, except the one that required absolute commitment. "Then we don't let them fire." He activated his suit's communication systems, broadcasting on the frequencies Taval had identified. His universal translator would render his words into Romulan, though he had no illusions about whether honesty would spare them. "Romulan vessel, I am Batman of Earth. We are conducting emergency operations to seal a dimensional breach that threatens both Federation and Romulan space. We have no hostile intent toward your empire." The response came immediately, a voice carrying the clipped authority of military command, translated into Federation standard. "Unknown vessel, you have violated the Neutral Zone Treaty and are conducting unauthorized operations near Romulan territory. Power down your systems and prepare to be taken into custody. This is your only warning." Taval's expression remained controlled, but her voice carried urgency. "They are targeting us. Weapons lock achieved. They will fire in 15 seconds." Batman's eyes fixed on the dimensional breach behind them, the tear in reality that connected to his universe, to Gotham, to everything he'd spent his life protecting. The breach that would allow Ra's al Ghul to spread his genocide across an entire new reality if left unchecked. "Taval, if I keep them talking, can you finish the disruption?" "Possibly. However, your communication will not prevent them from firing once they determine you cannot be taken into custody." "I'm not trying to prevent them from firing." Batman's hand moved to his utility belt, selecting specific gadgets. "I'm buying you time. Focus on the quantum matrices. I'll handle the Romulans." Before Taval could object logically, Batman activated his boot thrusters, adapted technology combining his suit's microjets with repurposed emergency thruster packs. He launched from the framework toward the approaching warbird, his cape spreading to stabilize flight as he crossed the vacuum between positions. The Romulan commander's voice crackled over communications. "What is that human doing?" Batman didn't answer. He fired a grappling line, a nanocable strong enough to support his weight even in zero gravity, its magnetic tip designed to adhere to starship hulls. The line struck the warbird's forward hull and locked. Batman swung toward the massive vessel like a dark comet, using momentum to carry him along its surface. Disruptor fire lanced past him, warning shots. The Warbird's tactical officer hadn't anticipated a single individual attacking a capital ship with nothing but personal equipment. Batman used their momentary confusion to reach a sensor array mounted on the Warbird's primary hull. His gauntlets deployed cutting tools adapted from Starfleet technology, molecular resonance saws that sliced through the array's shielding. "Intruder has breached our forward sensor array," a Romulan voice reported urgently. "He is sabotaging our targeting systems." Batman worked with brutal efficiency, his detective's mind identifying critical components and severing connections that would blind the Warbird's weapons targeting. It wouldn't stop them from firing, it would simply make precision targeting impossible. Firing blindly risked hitting the dimensional framework and triggering the catastrophic subspace collapse both sides wanted to avoid. "Commander, we cannot target the intruder without risking damage to our own systems. He has positioned himself on vital." "I can see where he is positioned," the Romulan commander snarled. "Deploy security teams. Beam him into our brig." Batman felt the transporter effect beginning, the familiar shimmer as the Warbird's systems attempted to lock onto his quantum signature. But he'd anticipated this. His hand activated a device from his utility belt, a transporter scrambler salvaged from Section 31 equipment, designed specifically to prevent unauthorized beamouts. The transport effect fizzled and failed. "Commander, we cannot achieve transporter lock. His equipment is generating interference." On the dimensional framework, Taval worked with Vulcan focus despite the chaos around her. She inserted Batman's chemical compounds into the biological circuits, while simultaneously using her tricorder to generate harmonic dissonance across the quantum entanglement matrices. The crystals began vibrating at frequencies that made the entire structure shudder. "Dissonance cascade initiating," she murmured to herself, monitoring readings that showed the quantum connection destabilizing. 90 seconds until complete severance. 89, 88. Batman clung to the Warbird's hull as explosive decompression blasts erupted around him. The Romulans were venting atmosphere from nearby sections to dislodge him without firing weapons. He activated magnetic seals at maximum strength, anchoring himself against the hurricane forces while his cape whipped in the escaping gases. His suit's oxygen supply showed 8 minutes remaining. Taval needed 90 seconds to complete the disruption. The Romulans would find a way to dislodge him before then. They were adaptable, intelligent enemies who'd faced Federation tactical innovation for decades. But they hadn't faced him. Batman deployed micro-explosives along the Warbird's hull, shaped charges that would damage external systems without penetrating the ship's integrity. He wasn't trying to destroy the vessel or kill its crew. He was creating chaos, forcing them to prioritize damage control over capturing one intruder. The charges detonated in sequence. Communication arrays exploded into debris. Sensor nodes went dark. External weapons mounts sparked with electrical discharge. Each explosion was calibrated to threaten systems without breaching the hull, walking the razor's edge between effective sabotage and mass murder. "All sections report damage," a Romulan voice called desperately. "Shields are fluctuating. Weapons targeting is down. Communications with the homeworld interrupted. Commander, this single human is crippling our vessel." The commander's response carried fury and grudging respect. "Then perhaps we have underestimated him. Deploy the emergency security team. Full disruptors. Kill him before he destroys my ship." 3 Romulans materialized on the hull via precision site-to-site transport, their disruptor rifles already targeting Batman's position. He moved instantly, his cape providing momentary concealment as he dodged the first volley of fire. Green energy beams scarred the hull where he'd been standing milliseconds before. Batman closed the distance before they could adjust aim. In zero gravity, momentum was everything. He struck the first Romulan with a precisely aimed blow that would have shattered ribs in Earth gravity, but here merely sent the soldier spinning away from the hull, his magnetic boots losing purchase. The second Romulan fired at point-blank range, but Batman twisted, using the first soldier as a shield. The disruptor beam struck the drifting Romulan instead, stunning him. The third Romulan proved more skilled. He adjusted for zero-gravity combat, using his boot thrusters to maintain position while firing in controlled bursts. Batman felt heat as energy beams passed centimeters from his armor, close enough that his suit's ablative plating began smoldering. He deployed a smoke pellet, adapted for vacuum by releasing reflective chaff that scattered sensor readings. The Romulan's targeting system struggled against the interference. Batman used the moment to launch himself forward, striking with a nerve pinch he'd studied from Starfleet medical databases on Vulcan anatomy. Romulans shared similar physiology. The soldier collapsed, unconscious. 30 seconds, Taval's voice crackled over Batman's private comm channel. The quantum disruption is approaching critical threshold. When it triggers, the breach will collapse rapidly. You must return to the runabout before. I know, Batman interrupted, already launching himself away from the Warbird's hull. His grappling line released, sending him tumbling through space toward the dimensional framework. Behind him, the Warbird's commander was ordering all weapons to fire. Precision no longer mattered compared to eliminating the threat that had humiliated them. Disruptor fire filled the space around the framework. Batman felt his cape take hits, ablative fibers vaporizing as energy beams found their target. His armor held, but barely. He crashed into the framework beside Taval with enough force to crack his helmet's display. "Now!" Taval commanded. She activated the final sequence, Batman's chemical compounds mixed with harmonic dissonance, creating a cascade reaction through the biological quantum hybrid circuits. The crystalline nodes shattered in sequence, each explosion severing another strand of dimensional entanglement. The breach itself began convulsing, its stable opening collapsing inward as the connection between universes failed. Through the shrinking breach, Batman saw glimpses of his Gotham, dark rooftops, familiar gargoyles, the city he'd sworn to protect. So close. For a moment he could have jumped through, returned home, left this universe to face Ra's al Ghul's invasion without him. But the breach was collapsing too quickly, and people here needed protection just as much as Gotham did. "Transporter armbands," Taval said urgently, activating her own. "Now!" They dematerialized seconds before the framework exploded in quantum fire, a detonation that rippled across dimensional boundaries, sealing the breach permanently and sending shockwaves that rocked the Romulan warbird despite its shields. Batman and Taval rematerialized in their runabout, the small vessel already moving away at maximum impulse. Behind them, the dimensional breach collapsed completely, leaving only dissipating exotic particles where the tear between universes had been. Taval's hands flew across navigation controls. "Romulan vessel is recovering. They will pursue. Our cloak is damaged from proximity to the quantum explosion. They may achieve sensor lock." "Then we don't run," Batman said, his voice rough from exertion and oxygen deprivation. "We hide. There." He pointed to the dead planetary system, airless worlds orbiting a white dwarf star. Taval understood immediately. She guided the runabout into the debris field surrounding the closest planet, using the sensor scattering properties of the asteroids and orbital decay to mask their signature. The warbird passed within 50,000 kilometers, its sensors sweeping space for the small craft that had humiliated them. But damaged sensors and the debris field's interference provided just enough cover. After 23 minutes, the warbird changed course, returning to Romulan space to report the incident and repair battle damage. In the runabout's darkened cabin, Batman removed his damaged cowl, revealing Bruce Wayne's face for the first time since arriving in this universe. Sweat matted his hair, blood dripped from a cut above his eye where the helmet had cracked, and exhaustion showed in every line of his face. Taval observed him with Vulcan reserve. "You risked your life to create a diversion while I completed the quantum disruption. Your tactical assessment proved accurate. The Romulans prioritized capturing you over targeting the framework. However, your probability of survival was calculated at 18%. I've worked with worse odds. That does not make the decision logical." Batman met her eyes. Logic isn't everything. Sometimes you have to trust that skills and experience can overcome statistics. "A very human perspective," Taval said. Then, after a pause, "But in this case, effective. The breach is sealed. The League of Assassins cannot use this location for invasion. You have protected this universe from immediate threat." "Immediate threat," Batman echoed. "But Ra's has 5 more quantum drills. He'll try again. Different locations, different strategies. This was one battle, not the war." Taval nodded. "Then we must locate the remaining drills before they activate. Section 31 will require comprehensive debriefing on the stabilization framework's design, the biological quantum hybrid technology, and Romulan response patterns." Batman pulled his cowl back on, the damaged display flickering before his suit's auto-repair systems stabilized the cracks. "Before we report to Sloan, I need to know something. Why did you really volunteer for Section 31? Vulcans follow logic. Working for an organization that operates through deception and manipulation seems contradictory." Taval's expression remained neutral, but something flickered in her eyes, emotion she would deny but couldn't completely suppress. "During the Dominion War, I served on a science vessel that encountered a Jem'Hadar attack wing. We followed Starfleet protocols, attempted communication, offered to withdraw peacefully, adhered to rules of engagement that prioritized minimal casualties. The Jem'Hadar did not share these priorities. They destroyed our ship. 307 crew members died. I survived only because I was conducting external sensor calibration when the attack occurred." She paused, her fingers tight on the navigation controls. "I realized then that Starfleet's principles, while philosophically sound, sometimes prove tactically insufficient against enemies who do not reciprocate ethical restraint. Section 31 offers logical alternative. Protect Federation ideals by employing methods those ideals prevent official forces from using. The ends justify the means," Batman said quietly. "Does your code against killing not represent similar philosophy? You employ violence, fear, and deception to protect innocence. You simply draw your ethical line in a different location than Section 31 draws theirs." Batman had no answer to that. Because she was right. He'd spent years justifying his methods as necessary evils, drawing his own line while condemning others for drawing theirs differently. The difference was he'd never believed his line was the only correct one. He'd simply believed it was his. "Set course for the Section 31 station," Batman finally said. "We report the mission success and start planning for the next breach. But Taval, after this is over, after Ra's is stopped, I'm having that conversation with Sloan about what Section 31 expects from us. And you're going to back me up." Taval raised an eyebrow. "You assume I will choose loyalty to you over loyalty to the organization that recruited me. I assume you'll choose logic over manipulation, and it's not logical to trust people who see you as an asset rather than a person." The runabout accelerated into warp, leaving the neutral zone behind. On the view screen, stars streaked past, countless worlds, billions of lives, all protected because 2 operatives had crossed lines that shouldn't have needed crossing. And somewhere in a classified facility, Director Sloan reviewed sensor recordings of the operation with satisfaction. Batman was proving everything Section 31 had hoped: effective, ruthless when necessary, and increasingly isolated from the Federation principles that might have restrained him. The Dark Knight was becoming exactly what they needed him to be. The Section 31 station's briefing room felt smaller when Director Sloan's approval weighed in the air like humidity before a storm. Batman stood beside Taval, both still wearing their operation suits, as holographic displays replayed their mission. The dimensional breach sealed, the Romulan warbird humiliated, and Ra's al Ghul's first invasion attempt thwarted. "Exemplary work," Sloan said, his tone carrying satisfaction that made Batman's instincts flare with warning. "You accomplished the mission objective with minimal collateral damage, avoided triggering a diplomatic incident with the Romulans, and gathered invaluable intelligence on the League's dimensional technology. Section 31 couldn't have asked for better results." "We got lucky," Batman said flatly. "The Romulans could have destroyed the framework before we completed disruption. If their commander had been more aggressive or less concerned about subspace collapse." "But they weren't, because you understood how they'd respond. You exploited their caution, their pride, their tactical doctrine." Sloan pulled up footage of Batman sabotaging the Warbird systems. "You operated like someone who spent years manipulating enemies through calculated escalation. That's precisely the expertise Section 31 needs." Taval's expression remained neutral, but Batman caught the subtle tension in her posture. She'd warned him about Sloan's manipulations. This felt like the beginning of that process, praise designed to lower defenses before the real request came. "What's the next target?" Batman asked, steering conversation toward mission parameters rather than philosophy. Sloan pulled up a star chart showing multiple sectors across Federation space and beyond. "We've detected subspace fluctuations in 4 additional locations over the past 6 hours. Your Ra's al Ghul isn't wasting time. He's activating multiple quantum drills simultaneously, creating breach points that will overwhelm our response capabilities." The locations appeared on the display, one in the Cardassian demilitarized zone, one near Klingon space, one in the Bajoran sector, and one deep in Federation territory near a major colony world. Batman's tactical mind immediately recognized the pattern. He's forcing you to choose. You can't defend all 4 locations simultaneously. Whichever breach you ignore becomes his primary invasion route. Exactly, and Starfleet Command refuses to acknowledge the threat. They see dimensional incursions as theoretical physics problems, not imminent invasions. By the time they mobilize forces through proper channels, Rays will have established footholds across the quadrant. Sloan leaned forward. "We need to hit all 4 locations simultaneously with covert teams operating outside official Starfleet protocols." "You don't have enough operatives," Batman concluded. "That's why you're telling me this." "We have operatives. What we lack is someone with comprehensive knowledge of League tactical doctrine, their technology, and their strategic thinking. Someone who can coordinate multiple teams and anticipate Ra's al Ghul's responses." Sloan's expression showed calculated sincerity. "We need you to lead this operation, Batman. 4 teams, 4 targets. 12 hours to seal all breaches before they stabilize." Batman studied the star chart, his mind already gaming out scenarios. Coordinating simultaneous operations across vast distances required real-time intelligence sharing, precise timing, and operatives capable of adapting to unexpected complications. In Gotham, he'd managed similar operations through the Bat family, Nightwing, Red Robin, Oracle providing coordination. Here, he'd be directing strangers through unfamiliar territory against an enemy who knew him better than they did. "Show me your operatives," Batman demanded. Sloan activated additional displays. 4 personnel files appeared, each showing individuals whose backgrounds read like recruitment pitches for morally gray operations. A former Starfleet tactical officer court-martialed for unauthorized weapons development. A Klingon intelligence operative exiled for being too brutal, even by Klingon standards. An Andorian infiltration specialist with a list of successful assassinations that would horrify Federation ethics review. A human explosives expert whose methods had been deemed excessive by Starfleet EOD teams. These people are Section 31's field specialists, Sloan explained. Highly effective, comfortable operating in ethical gray areas, and expendable if operations go wrong. They'll follow your tactical guidance without questioning methods. That last phrase triggered every warning instinct Batman had developed. Expendable. Sloan was offering him command of operatives he considered disposable assets. In Gotham, Batman had never viewed his partners that way. Dick, Tim, Barbara, even Jason, despite their conflicts, they were family. Not tools. Not expendables. I need to speak with them directly, Batman said. Assess their capabilities myself. Unnecessary. I've provided their files. Files don't tell me how they think under pressure, how they adapt, whether they'll follow complex tactical plans or improvise stupidly when things go wrong. Batman's voice carried the authority of someone who'd commanded teams through Gotham's worst nights. If I'm coordinating this operation, I need to know the people I'm coordinating, not negotiable. Sloan's expression flickered, annoyance quickly suppressed. Very well, Taval will arrange briefings with each operative, but Batman, understand that time is critical. We have 11 hours before the first breach reaches stabilization threshold. Every minute spent on personnel assessment is a minute Reyes uses to strengthen his footholds. Then we'd better not waste time arguing about it. Batman turned to Taval. Where are these operatives stationed? Distributed across 3 sectors, Taval replied, accessing her datapad. Assembling them for in-person briefings would require approximately 4 hours given current transport schedules. Make it happen. I'll review their files while you arrange it. Batman looked at Sloan directly. And Director, I lead the operation. I take responsibility for it. That means if I decide someone's methods are too extreme or their tactics are compromising mission success, I pull them. No second guessing from you. Agreed? Sloan's smile didn't reach his eyes. You're quite protective of command authority for someone who claims to work alone. I work alone because most people can't be trusted. When I do work with others, I make damn sure they meet my standards. Batman crossed his arms. Do we have an agreement? Agreed. You have tactical command. Sloan deactivated the displays. Taval, coordinate the briefings. Batman, I suggest you rest while you can. The next 12 hours will test limits you didn't know you had. As they left the briefing room, Taval spoke quietly. You challenged Director Sloan's authority. That was either tactically astute or profoundly unwise. He is not accustomed to operatives demanding command concessions. Which is exactly why I demanded them. People who expect blind obedience are people who will sacrifice those under them the moment it becomes convenient. Batman's jaw tightened. I've seen it before. Government agencies that treat operatives as expendable resources, justifying casualties through statistical analysis. I won't be part of that. Yet you agreed to lead this operation. You will be responsible for those operatives' safety. That's the point. If I'm responsible, I can control how they're deployed. I can make sure they come back alive. Batman stopped in the corridor, turning to face Taval. In Gotham, I worked with people I trained personally, people I trusted. Here, I'm working with Section 31 operatives whose methods I don't know and whose loyalty is to an organization that sees them as expendable. That's dangerous for them and for the mission. Taval's expression showed the Vulcan equivalent of concern. You are attempting to impose your ethical framework on an operation designed by an organization with fundamentally different values. The probability of conflict between your command decisions and Section 31 objectives is 91%. Good, because if there's no conflict, it means I've compromised too far. They continued through the station's corridors toward the quarters where Batman could review operative files in detail. Around them, Section 31 personnel moved with the efficient anonymity of intelligence operatives, no insignia, no ranks, nothing that would identify them beyond the organization's shadowy boundaries. Batman accessed the first operative's file on a secure terminal. Lieutenant Marcus Reeves, former Starfleet tactical, court-martialed for developing a weapons system that violated Federation ban on subspace weapons. Brilliant engineer, pragmatic to the point of callousness, recommended for termination by 3 different review boards before Section 31 recruited him. The second file detailed a Klingon named Korveth, exiled from the Empire for torturing prisoners to extract intelligence during the Dominion War. Effective interrogator, loyalty questionable. Multiple reports of excessive force during field operations. Third operative, Shilar, Andorian infiltration specialist. Successful deep cover operations in Romulan territory, Cardassian space, and Orion Syndicate. Body count classified but estimated at 37 confirmed kills. Psychological profile suggested sociopathic tendencies masked by professional competence. Fourth, Dr. Sarah Chen, human explosives and demolitions, dismissed from Starfleet Corps of Engineers for designing experimental weapons too unstable for deployment. Recreationally addicted to adrenaline. Risk assessment noted reckless disregard for personal safety during demolitions. Batman leaned back from the terminal, his detective's mind analyzing the pattern. Sloan had assembled a team of broken, dangerous individuals whose methods exceeded Federation tolerance but fell short of complete psychopathy. They were weapons pointed at threats Starfleet couldn't officially acknowledge, and now Sloan wanted Batman to aim them. Taval entered the quarters, carrying data isolinear chips. I have arranged sequential briefings beginning in 2 hours. Each operative will have 30 minutes to meet with you and receive mission parameters. However, I must inform you that all 4 expressed reservations about working under someone they consider an outsider. They think I'm not ruthless enough, Batman translated. They think you are inexperienced with this universe's strategic realities and will impose limitations that compromise operational effectiveness. Korveth specifically stated he would not follow commands from a human who plays at being a bat. Direct quote. Batman's expression behind the cowl remained neutral. Then I'll have to convince them otherwise. How? By being exactly what they need me to be. Batman stood, moving to a weapons locker where Section 31 had stored his equipment after repairs. His utility belt had been refilled with adapted gadgets. His armor's damaged sections replaced with materials that would function properly in this universe's physics. In Gotham, I earned respect by being the scariest thing in the room. Here, I'll do the same. Taval's eyebrow rose fractionally. You intend to intimidate Section 31's most dangerous operatives into following your command through demonstration of superior threat capability. Something like that. Fascinating. I calculate a 47% probability this approach results in physical altercation with Korveth specifically. His cultural conditioning prioritizes displays of warrior prowess. Then we'll see who's better. Batman secured his utility belt, feeling the familiar weight settle around his waist. For the first time since arriving in this universe, he felt properly equipped, not just with gadgets, but with purpose. These operatives needed someone to command them who understood the darkness they operated in while maintaining the principles that separated operators from murderers. He'd spent years being that person in Gotham. Now he'd prove he could be that person here. Over the next 2 hours, Batman studied each operative's file with the intensity he'd once applied to analyzing Gotham's crime families. He identified patterns in their thinking, weaknesses in their tactical approaches, and psychological levers that could be used for motivation or manipulation. By the time the first briefing began, he knew these operatives better than they knew themselves. And when Corveth entered the briefing room radiating Klingon disdain, when Marcus Reeves sneered at the vigilante playing soldier, when Shalar assessed him with the cold calculation of a professional killer, and when Sarah Chen cracked jokes about the bat-themed Halloween costume, Batman was ready. He didn't argue with their contempt. He didn't justify his presence or defend his methods. He simply activated the room's holographic displays and began outlining the operation with such comprehensive tactical precision, such detailed understanding of each operative's capabilities and optimal deployment, such ruthless efficiency in mission parameters that contempt slowly transformed into reluctant attention. Corveth, you'll lead the team assaulting the Cardassian demilitarized zone breach. The location puts you in territory where Cardassian Obsidian Order will respond aggressively. You'll need to complete disruption within 48 minutes or face reinforcements you can't defeat. I'm assigning you this target because Klingon warrior culture gives you psychological advantage. Cardassians fear honorable combat, and you'll use that fear tactically. Corveth's expression shifted from contempt to grudging interest. Reeves, the Klingon space breach requires someone who can adapt Federation technology to work against League quantum systems under combat conditions. You'll have access to experimental weapons Section 31 has developed but never field-tested. Deploy them at your discretion. If you die because they malfunction, that's acceptable risk. If you succeed, you'll have data on weapon systems Starfleet would never authorize. Reeves' eyes lit with the enthusiasm of an engineer given permission to break rules. Shalar, Bajoran sector breach is in politically volatile territory. Multiple factions will respond. Federation forces, Bajoran militia, potentially Cardassian observers, or Dominion intelligence remnants. You'll need deep cover infiltration protocols to reach the breach before others detect it. I'm assigning you this target because you're expendable if caught, and your psychological profile suggests you'll complete mission regardless of personal cost. Shilar's expression didn't change, but something in her posture acknowledged the brutal honesty. Chen, the Federation colony world breach is the highest stakes target. 17,000 colonists depend on you completing disruption before League forces cross over. You'll have access to experimental explosives. Margin for error is 0. Too much force and you kill the colonists. Too little and the breach stays open. I'm assigning you this because your psychological addiction to adrenaline means you'll perform best under maximum pressure. Chen stopped joking. Batman looked at each of them in sequence. You think I'm an outsider who doesn't understand this universe? You're right. I don't understand your politics, your factions, or your history. But I understand tactics. I understand how to coordinate teams against superior forces. And I understand that every one of you is dangerous because someone once told you the rules didn't apply. I'm not telling you the rules apply. I'm telling you that for the next 12 hours, you follow my tactical guidance or people die. After that, if you want to challenge me, we'll settle it however you prefer. Questions? Silence filled the briefing room. Then Corveth spoke, his voice carrying the grudging respect of one warrior acknowledging another. You speak like someone who has commanded warriors in battle. Perhaps you are not entirely pathetic. From a Klingon, that was practically effusive praise. We deploy in 6 hours, Batman said. To Val will coordinate communications and real-time intelligence. I'll monitor all 4 operations simultaneously and adjust tactics as situations develop. The objective is not just sealing breaches, it's learning enough about Ra's al Ghul's strategy to anticipate his next move. Every piece of data you extract from those frameworks gets transmitted immediately. Understood? 4 voices confirmed understanding. As they filed out to prepare, Taval approached Batman. You earned their respect through brutal honesty about their expendability. Director Sloan will be pleased. You are learning to think like Section 31. No, Batman said quietly. I told them the truth because they deserve to know the risks. Sloan would have lied to them. Let them discover expendability when it was too late to matter. There's a difference. Is there? Taval asked. You still sent them into missions where they may die? Yes, but they chose to go knowing the truth. That's not the same as being manipulated into dying for someone else's agenda. Batman turned toward the operations center where he'd coordinate the assault. The difference matters, Taval. It has to. As they walked through the station's corridors toward the operations center, Batman felt the weight of command settling across his shoulders. In 6 hours, 4 teams would deploy across the quadrant to face an enemy who'd spent centuries perfecting the art of tactical genocide. People would likely die. The missions would probably expose more of Ra's al Ghul's dimensional invasion plans, and every decision Batman made would pull him deeper into Section 31's morally ambiguous operations. But somewhere in his universe, Gotham still needed protecting, and the only way home was through this war. The Dark Knight had chosen his path. Now he had to walk it to whatever end awaited in the darkness between universes. The Section 31 Operations Center hummed with controlled intensity. Holographic displays tracking 4 simultaneous missions across the quadrant, while Batman stood at the central command console, his cowl systems synced with the station's tactical network. 6 hours of preparation had compressed into this moment. 4 teams deploying into hostile territory, 4-dimensional breaches approaching critical stabilization, and 1 chance to stop Ra's al Ghul's multi-dimensional invasion before it became unstoppable. All teams report ready status, Taval announced from her coordination station, her Vulcan efficiency managing communication channels across vast distances. Corveth's team is entering the Cardassian demilitarized zone. Reeves approaching Klingon space coordinates. Shilar has established deep cover in Bajoran sector. Chen's team is 3 minutes from Federation colony, world breach. Batman's eyes tracked all 4 displays simultaneously, his detective's mind processing tactical variables with the same intensity he'd once applied to Gotham's gang wars. But this wasn't street-level crime. This was interstellar warfare against an enemy who'd perfected strategic patience across centuries. Corveth, status, Batman commanded. The Klingon's voice crackled through subspace communication, barely concealing anticipatory violence. We have detected the dimensional framework. It is defended by automated weapons platforms, 6 units, League design. They have not yet detected our cloaked approach. Hold position, Batman ordered. Don't engage until all teams are in position. We hit simultaneously, or Ra's will adapt his remaining breaches to counter whichever tactic we use first. Waiting is dishonorable, Corveth growled. We should attack immediately, overwhelm them through. You should follow orders or I'll find someone who will. Batman's voice carried the same absolute authority he'd once used to command the Justice League during crisis situations. Your warrior instincts are assets when properly channeled. Right now, they're liabilities. Hold, position, silence. Then, understood. The second display showed Reeves's team approaching the Klingon space breach in a heavily modified assault shuttle. Marcus Reeves's voice came through clinical and focused. Batman, we've got a problem. Klingon Defense Force vessels are converging on our coordinates. 3 birds of prey, heavy weapons configuration. They detected the subspace anomaly and are investigating. Batman pulled up tactical projections showing the Klingon ship's approach vectors. Time until they reach weapons range, 4 minutes. If they identify our vessel as Federation design in Klingon territory, they'll fire first and request explanations from our wreckage. Then don't look Federation. To Val, can you transmit false identification codes that register Reeves's shuttle as independent freighter? To Val's fingers flew across her console. Transmitting Orion Syndicate credentials. The Klingons have standing arrangements with certain Orion merchants. They may choose to ignore what appears to be smuggling operation rather than investigate and disrupt profitable trade relationships. Do it, Batman commanded. Reeves, alter your approach to look like you're avoiding the Klingons while actually circling toward the breach from their sensor shadow. They'll read it as guilty behavior from smugglers and probably let you pass. Deception as tactic, Reeves said with approval. I like your style, Batman. The third display showed Shilar's position, infiltrated deep into a Bajoran mining facility near the sector's dimensional breach. Her voice came through whisper-quiet, professional calm, masking the danger of her situation. I have located the quantum framework within the mining facility's lower levels, but the League has personnel on site, 4 humans, armed with weapons technology I don't recognize. Energy signatures suggest they're maintaining the breach manually, adjusting quantum entanglement in real time. Batman's tactical computer flagged the significance immediately. That's different from the other breaches. Roz put actual operatives on site instead of just automated systems. He's protecting this breach specifically. His mind raced through implications. Shilar, can you identify what makes this location strategically valuable? The mining facility extracts uridium, not particularly rare, but this planet's deposits contain unusual quantum-resonant properties, according to geological surveys. If the League is using quantum-resonant materials to stabilize their dimensional breach, then this framework is the anchor point, Batman concluded. The other breaches are sustained by this one. If we shut down the Bajoran breach first, the others become unstable. He pulled up strategic projections showing quantum entanglement patterns connecting all 4 breach points. Taval, analyze these readings. Am I right? Taval's eyes moved rapidly across data streams, her positronic speed mental calculations parsing quantum mechanics that would take human scientists weeks to verify. Affirmative. The Bajoran breach exhibits primary quantum signatures. The other 3 locations show secondary entanglement. They are sustained partially through connection to this central breach point. If we sever the Bajoran framework, the others will experience destabilization cascade. Not immediate collapse, but significant weakening. Which means we change tactics, Batman said, already reformulating the entire operation. Shilar takes priority. The other 3 teams switch to holding patterns, keep those breaches from stabilizing, but don't fully disrupt them until Shilar completes her objective. Director Sloane's voice cut through communications from his monitoring station. Batman, that's tactical revision in mid-operation. We planned simultaneous strikes because we didn't know one breach was anchoring the others, Batman interrupted. Plans change when intelligence changes. That's basic tactical doctrine. His eyes remained fixed on Shilar's display. Shilar, your primary objective now. All other teams are supporting your mission. Can you eliminate those League operatives and shut down the framework? Silence. When Shilar spoke again, her voice carried the cold calculation Batman recognized from Gotham's most dangerous assassins. 4 targets, close quarters, unknown weapons. I calculate 62% survival probability if I engage directly. Then don't engage directly. Batman pulled up the mining facility's schematics, his detective's mind identifying structural vulnerabilities. There, the facility's geothermal power system runs beneath the chamber where they're maintaining the breach. If you overload the thermal regulators, you trigger controlled venting that floods the chamber with superheated steam. Non-lethal, but completely incapacitating. While they're disabled, you shut down the framework. That violates mining safety protocols. The venting system is emergency only. Emergency only, Batman repeated. I'd say 4 armed terrorists maintaining a dimensional invasion point qualifies as emergency. Do it. Understood. Proceeding to thermal regulator access. The 4th display showed Chen's team hovering near the Federation colony world, her voice bubbling with barely restrained excitement despite the stakes. We've got visual on the framework. It's beautiful, in a going to kill thousands of people if we screw this up kind of way. But Batman, there's additional complication. The framework is positioned directly above the colony's primary water treatment facility. If we blow it with standard explosives, debris will contaminate the entire water supply. Batman's jaw tightened. Ra's had chosen that position deliberately, forced defenders to either allow the breach to remain open or poison the water supply that sustained the colony. Classic League methodology: create situations where every option caused suffering, then present his genocide as mercy compared to slow death by contaminated resources. Chen, you've got experimental shape charge explosives in your kit. Can you configure them to direct blast force upward, away from the water facility? Maybe. Probably. 50-50 chance the blast vectoring works as calculated versus fragmenting in random directions that could still hit the facility. Then you'd better make sure it works. Batman pulled up Chen's psychological profile, remembering her addiction to high-stakes scenarios. This is the challenge you've been waiting for. Explosive deployment where margin for error is 0 and 17,000 lives depend on you being better at your job than physics says you should be. You going to let theoretical limitations stop you, Dr. Chen? Chen's laugh carried manic edge. You really know how to motivate people, Batman. All right, I'm configuring the charges. This is either going to be my greatest professional achievement or the worst disaster in Federation demolitions history. It'll be an achievement, Batman said with certainty he didn't entirely feel, because you're not going to let those colonists die. Across all 4 displays, operations progressed according to revised tactical plans. Corveth maintained holding position despite Klingon instincts screaming for immediate attack. Reeves successfully deceived the Klingon Defense Force through implied criminality. Shilar moved through the mining facility's maintenance tunnels with the silent efficiency of a predator stalking prey. Chen configured shaped charges with hands that should have been shaking but remained surgeon steady. Batman watched them all, his mind tracking dozens of variables simultaneously, the same mental discipline that had allowed him to coordinate Gotham's heroes during crises now applied across light years. This was what he'd trained for, even if he'd never anticipated the scale would span universes. Shilar reporting. The Andorian's voice came through tight with controlled adrenaline. I've reached the thermal regulators, preparing to initiate overload sequence. However, I am detecting subspace communication from the League operatives to an external source. They are reporting to someone. Transmission destination cannot be traced. It's crossing dimensional boundaries. Batman's blood went cold. They're reporting to Ra's. He's monitoring this operation directly from my universe. Which meant Ra's knew about the coordinated strike, knew Section 31 had deployed teams, and was likely preparing countermeasures in real time. All teams, listen carefully, Batman commanded. Ra's al Ghul is watching this operation. Whatever you do next, assume he's adapting his strategy to counter it. Shilar, initiate thermal overload now before they can receive new orders. Other teams, prepare for complications. If Roz can communicate across dimensions, he might be able to send reinforcements or activate contingency systems we haven't detected. Initiating overload, Shilar confirmed. Thermal pressure building. Venting in 3, 2, 1. On the display, sensor readings showed superheated steam erupting through the chamber where League operatives had been maintaining the breach. The four figures scattered, their weapons dropping as they fled the suddenly hostile environment. Shilar moved immediately, her infiltration suit protecting against the heat as she accessed the quantum framework's control nexus. "I'm at the framework," she reported, attempting shutdown sequence using the protocols Batman provided. The biological circuits are responding to the chemical compounds. Quantum entanglement is destabilizing. But then new alarms shrieked across the operations center. Taval's voice carried uncharacteristic urgency. Batman, massive energy surge detected at all 4 breach locations. The quantum entanglement is not weakening, it's amplifying. The breaches are feeding power to each other in cascade loop. Batman's tactical computer analyzed the data, and horror dawned as he understood Ra's al Ghul's true strategy. The eco-terrorist hadn't anchored the breaches to make them mutually sustaining. He designed them to amplify each other when disrupted. Every attempt to shut them down fed more energy into the dimensional barriers, accelerating stabilization rather than preventing it. "It's a trap," Batman said, his voice carrying the sick realization of someone who'd been outmaneuvered. Roz wanted us to find the breach pattern. He wanted us to disrupt them. Every action we take strengthens his invasion instead of stopping it. Director Sloane's face appeared on a communication screen, his expression showing rare alarm. "Batman, if those breaches continue amplifying at current rates, they'll stabilize in 18 minutes. League invasion forces will begin crossing over before we can mount effective defense. All teams, abort," Batman commanded immediately. "Fall back from the breaches. Do not engage the frameworks further. We're making it worse." But even as the words left his mouth, Batman knew retreat wasn't enough. Roz had spent centuries perfecting his strategies. He wouldn't have designed a trap with only one outcome. There had to be a counter move, a tactical option that turned the amplification cascade against itself. Batman's mind raced through possibilities with the desperate intensity of someone who'd spent his life finding solutions others deemed impossible. The breaches were feeding power to each other through quantum entanglement, amplifying when disrupted, growing stronger through conventional countermeasures. "Unless..." "Taval," Batman said urgently. "The quantum entanglement amplification, it's designed to counter standard disruption methods. But what if we don't disrupt it? What if we overload it instead? Feed so much energy into the system that it exceeds theoretical maximum entanglement thresholds and collapses under its own quantum weight?" Taval's eyes widened fractionally, the Vulcan equivalent of shocked recognition. Theoretically possible, but it would require simultaneous massive energy discharge at all 4 breach points. The power requirements would be... "Whatever they are, find a way," Batman interrupted. "All teams, new objective. Instead of shutting down the frameworks, you're going to overload them. Reeves, you've got experimental weapons. Target maximum power discharge directly into the quantum matrices. Corveth, use your ship's weapons systems at full strength against the framework. Chen, configure your explosives for maximum energy release directly into the breach. Shilar." "I understand," Shilar said. "Close-range overload using mining facilities' geothermal power. It will likely destroy the entire facility. Evacuate the personnel first, then do it." Batman looked at the countdown timer showing 17 minutes until full stabilization. "We've got one chance. Simultaneous overload across all 4 locations. Taval will coordinate timing down to the microsecond. When she gives the signal, you unleash everything you've got. Questions? This will probably kill us, Chen observed with disturbing cheerfulness. Then make sure it kills the breaches first, Batman said. To Val, calculate optimal discharge timing and transmit to all teams. The next 16 minutes passed in controlled chaos as 4 teams prepared to sacrifice themselves in desperate gambit against an enemy who'd planned this scenario centuries in advance. Corveth's warrior pride transformed into professional focus as he positioned his vessel for maximum weapons impact. Reeves armed experimental weapon systems with hands that betrayed no fear, despite knowing they'd never been tested at full power. Chen evacuated the colony's water treatment staff while configuring explosives for energetic yield that violated every safety protocol. Shilar coldly calculated how to redirect an entire geothermal power system through equipment never designed for such loads. And Batman watched them all, coordinating through Taval's precision timing, his mind carrying the weight of 4 lives he'd sent into mortality's shadow. 30 seconds, Taval announced. All teams report ready status. 4 confirmations came through, professional, controlled, accepting. 20 seconds. Batman's hands gripped the command console. In Gotham, he'd sent partners into danger countless times, but they'd been family, people he'd trained, people who chose that life knowing the risks. These Section 31 operatives were strangers he'd commanded for less than a day, now facing death to stop an invasion most of the galaxy didn't even know threatened them. 10 seconds. All teams, Batman said quietly. Whatever happens next, you did everything right. The invasion ends here because you made it end. That matters. Silence answered him. Then Corveth's voice, carrying something like respect. Perhaps you understand warriors after all, Batman. It has been an honor. Execute, Taval commanded. Across the quadrant at 4 separate coordinates, quantum frameworks erupted with forces they were never designed to contain. Reeves' experimental weapons pumped exotic particles directly into quantum matrices. Corveth's disruptor arrays fired until his ship's power systems screamed overload warnings. Chen's shaped charges detonated with precision that would have made her professors weep, directing unimaginable force upward into the breach while sparing the water facility below. Shilar channeled a planet's geothermal fury through crystalline circuits that vaporized instantly. The operations center displays showed quantum entanglement readings spiking beyond theoretical maximums. The breaches weren't amplifying, they were convulsing, the dimensional barriers straining under impossible energy loads. For 3 eternal seconds, the breaches tried to absorb the power being forced through them. Then they collapsed. Not gradually, not controllably. The dimensional barriers imploded catastrophically, snapping back like overstretched elastic severing under tension. Subspace itself rippled with the violence of 4 simultaneous dimensional closures, energy cascading through quantum fields in ways that would give Federation physicists research projects for decades. And then, silence. The display showed empty space where the breaches had been. No quantum signatures, no dimensional instability. No invasion forces crossing between universes. Just 4 teams who'd somehow survived delivering forces that should have killed them. All teams report status, Batman demanded, his voice rough with emotion he refused to show. Corveth's voice came through first, surprised to be alive. My vessel survived, barely. We are venting plasma from multiple hull breaches, but we live. The breach is closed. Reeves here. The experimental weapons worked, also exploded. But the explosion was directional away from us, so that's basically success, right? Chen reporting. The charges performed exactly as calculated. The breach is gone. The colony is safe. and I am never going to doubt myself again because that was impossible, and I did it anyway. Shilar, the Andorian's calm voice carried undertones of satisfaction. The mining facility is destroyed, but the breach collapsed before League operatives could escape. They are dead. Mission accomplished. Batman exhaled breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. They'd survived. Against Ra's al Ghul's centuries-refined tactical planning, against quantum physics weaponized by immortal zealot, against every probability that suggested this operation should have ended in catastrophic failure. They'd survived, and more importantly, they'd won. All teams return to Section 31 station for debriefing, Batman ordered. You stopped an interdimensional invasion today. The Federation will never know what you did, but you'll know. That's enough. As communication channels closed and teams began withdrawal procedures, Director Sloan approached Batman's command position. His expression showed calculation rather than relief, already processing how this success could be leveraged for future operations. Remarkable, Batman. You coordinated a complex multi-theater operation, adapted tactics in real time based on emerging intelligence, and achieved mission success against overwhelming odds. Section 31 could use someone with your capabilities on a permanent basis. Batman turned to face Sloan, and the director took an involuntary step backward from the controlled fury in the Dark Knight's eyes. Those operatives almost died because you sent them against an enemy you didn't fully understand, Batman said quietly, his voice carrying more threat than any shout. You called them expendable. You treated them like weapons to be aimed and forgotten. That stops now. Batman, you're overreacting. No. I'm establishing boundaries. Batman moved closer, his armored presence dominating the space between them. I worked this operation because the stakes demanded it, but I'm done taking orders from an organization that sees people as disposable assets. If Section 31 wants my cooperation in the future, you'll treat your operatives like the professionals they are, not expendable resources. Otherwise, you and I will have a different kind of conversation. Sloan's expression hardened. You're in no position to make demands. I just saved this universe from dimensional invasion. I'd say that puts me in excellent position to make demands. Batman's eyes never left Sloan's face. You need me more than I need you, Director. Remember that next time you consider manipulating me. He turned away, leaving Sloan standing in the operations center with Tival, who watched the exchange with raised eyebrow. Director, Tival said carefully, I believe Batman has just established he will not be easily controlled. This complicates Section 31's operational planning regarding his integration. It complicates everything, Sloan muttered, then louder. But a weapon that thinks for itself can still be aimed. We'll find another approach. Tival said nothing, but her calculation suggested that attempting to manipulate someone like Batman would prove considerably more dangerous than Sloan anticipated. The USS Enterprise moved through Federation space at standard warp, its mission of exploration continuing as if the quadrant hadn't been hours away from interdimensional invasion. On the bridge, Captain Picard reviewed reports from Starfleet Command regarding unusual sensor readings detected across multiple sectors, officially unexplained phenomena, though he suspected a more classified truth behind the sanitized reports. The door to his ready room chimed. Come. Batman entered, his cape settling around him as the door closed. He'd transported directly to the Enterprise from the Section 31 station, bypassing official channels in ways that made Worf's security protocols meaningless. Picard gestured to the chair across from his desk. You've returned, Picard observed. Director Sloan indicated you'd be conducting extended operations with Section 31. I'm surprised to see you here instead. Batman remained standing. The operations are complete. The dimensional breaches are sealed. Ra's al Ghul's invasion has been stopped, at least temporarily. He paused. I came to tell you that you were right about Section 31. Picard's expression showed carefully controlled satisfaction. In what respect? They see people as tools, expendable assets that exist to serve organizational objectives without regard for individual value. Batman's jaw tightened. I worked with them because the stakes demanded it, but I'm not working for them. There's a difference. A distinction that matters greatly, Picard acknowledged. Though I notice you said the invasion was stopped temporarily, you believe Ra's al Ghul will attempt further incursions? I know he will. He spent centuries pursuing his vision of planetary salvation through genocide. One setback won't stop him. It'll inform his next strategy. He'll analyze what went wrong, adapt his technology, and try again through different vectors. Batman moved to the viewport, watching stars streak past at warp speed. The quantum drills in my universe are still operational. As long as they exist, the threat remains. Then perhaps, Picard said carefully, the solution is to return to your universe and neutralize the threat at its source. Batman's reflection in the viewport showed conflict he rarely allowed others to see. I've been working with Tival to analyze the quantum data we gathered from the breaches. Theoretically, we could use the same principles to create a controlled dimensional crossing, send me back to my universe deliberately rather than waiting for random accident or another invasion attempt. But, Picard prompted, hearing the hesitation. But creating a stable, controlled dimensional crossing requires technology the Federation doesn't officially possess, and power sources that would take months to properly configure. Meanwhile, Ra's could activate the remaining quantum drills at any time, opening new breaches that this universe wouldn't detect until too late. Batman turned from the viewport. I can't go home until I've ensured this universe is protected from the threat I brought here. You didn't bring the threat, Picard corrected gently. An accident brought you. Ra's al Ghul's megalomania created the threat. You've done nothing but attempt to mitigate damage caused by forces beyond your control. Doesn't matter. The League wouldn't be targeting this universe if I hadn't crossed over first, if my arrival hadn't shown Rays that dimensional travel was possible. Batman's hands clenched. In Gotham, I've spent years dealing with the consequences of my actions, criminals I inspired, escalations I triggered by becoming Batman. This is the same principle on universal scale. Picard stood, moving around his desk to face Batman directly. You carry tremendous responsibility on your shoulders, perhaps more than any one person should bear. But you're in a universe now where you don't have to carry it alone. Starfleet resources, Federation scientific expertise, allies who share your commitment to protecting innocent lives. These are available to you without requiring you to compromise your principles or work through shadowy organizations. Batman studied the captain with the intensity of someone evaluating whether trust was warranted or weakness. The Federation moves slowly. Committees, councils, diplomatic protocols. By the time your official channels approve action, Rays will have established footholds you can't eliminate. Sometimes, Picard acknowledged, but speed without wisdom often leads to unintended consequences. Section 31 operates quickly, but their methods create new problems while solving old ones. The Federation's approach may seem inefficient, but it builds sustainable peace rather than temporary security purchased through morally questionable means. I've heard that philosophy before, Batman said. Usually from people who haven't seen how evil exploits noble intentions. The Joker loves it when Batman refuses to kill him because he knows I'll always give him another chance to murder innocents. Ra's al Ghul has spent centuries exploiting humanity's belief in redemption and second chances. And yet you maintain your code against killing, Picard observed. despite recognizing that it sometimes allows evil to persist. Why? Batman was silent for a long moment. Because if I cross that line, I become something else, something I can't control. The code isn't about them, it's about me. About maintaining the distinction between justice and vengeance. Then you understand why the Federation maintains its principles even when pragmatism suggests otherwise, Picard said. We could operate like Section 31, could abandon transparency and accountability in favor of efficiency, but we'd lose what makes us worth protecting. The principles matter more than the outcome because the principles define who we are. Pretty words, Batman said, but they don't stop invasions. Neither do compromises that erode our humanity. Picard returned to his desk, pulling up a star chart showing Federation territory. Batman, I'm offering you something Section 31 never would. Partnership without manipulation. Work with Starfleet officially. Use our resources, our scientific expertise, our allies. Help us develop defenses against dimensional incursions that don't require covert operations or morally ambiguous tactics. It will take longer than you'd like, but the solutions will be sustainable. Batman considered the offer, his detective's mind analyzing angles and hidden costs. In Gotham, he'd learned that offers made without strings usually had strings so thin you didn't notice them until too late. But Picard's record, decades of diplomatic success, principled command decisions, willingness to sacrifice position rather than compromise values, suggested the captain genuinely meant what he offered. I'll work with Starfleet, Batman finally said. But I maintain operational independence. I coordinate with your people, share intelligence, contribute expertise. But I don't become another cog in your bureaucratic machine. I work my way, following my code, accepting responsibility for my actions. Agreed, Picard said immediately. Though I suspect Starfleet Command will have opinions about your methods. Ambassador-level complaints from the Romulans regarding unauthorized operations in the neutral zone have already begun circulating. Batman's expression might have been a smile behind the cowl. The Romulans will get over it. They respect strength more than protocol anyway. Perhaps, but Batman, understand that working with Starfleet means accepting their limitations as well as their resources. We won't always move as quickly as you'd like. We'll require evidence and deliberation before taking action. And there will be situations where prime directive or diplomatic considerations prevent us from intervening even when morally we believe we should. I've worked within limitations before, Batman said. Gotham's legal system, Gordon's police protocols, the Justice League's oversight. I know how to operate alongside official authorities without becoming one of them. Picard nodded. Then welcome to an official, if unconventional, partnership between Starfleet and... what should I call you? You've refused to provide your actual name. Batman is sufficient. Names are vulnerabilities I don't share. Very well, Batman. Commander Data has expressed interest in working with you to analyze the quantum technology you've encountered. Geordi believes understanding the League's dimensional breach mechanics could help us develop early warning systems. And Counselor Troy suggested you might benefit from conversations about adjusting to life in an unfamiliar universe. Batman's expression suggested extreme skepticism about the counseling suggestion. I'll work with Data and Geordi. The counselor can save her empathic analysis for people who want it. As you wish. Picard extended his hand across the desk. It's not often we have the opportunity to work with someone from another universe. I look forward to seeing what we can accomplish together. Batman shook the offered hand, the gesture feeling strange after years of maintaining distance from everyone except his closest allies. But this wasn't Gotham, and these weren't the corrupt officials who'd taught him distrust. Perhaps in this universe, trust was something that could be earned rather than weaponized. "One more thing," Batman said as he moved toward the door. "Section 31 will try to recruit me again, or eliminate me as security risk. When they make their move, I'll need Starfleet willing to acknowledge my work for you officially. Protection through transparency." "You'll have it," Picard promised, "though I suspect Section 31 will find you more difficult to manipulate or eliminate than they anticipate." Batman paused at the door. "They always do." Over the following days, Batman integrated into the Enterprise's operations with uncomfortable efficiency. Data found his analytical abilities fascinating, engaging in discussions about detective methodology and logical deduction that stretched both their capabilities. Geordi discovered that Batman's technological expertise, while based on different physical principles, translated surprisingly well to Federation systems. Even Worf developed grudging respect after Batman demonstrated combat techniques that worked against Klingon martial arts. The crew learned to work around Batman's nocturnal schedule, his tendency to disappear into ship systems to conduct unauthorized investigations, and his complete disregard for standard social protocols. He maintained distance from most personnel, though Riker noted he spent considerable time in observation lounges during Gamma Shift, watching stars he'd never seen from a universe he couldn't yet return to. Taval contacted him regularly via secure channels, providing intelligence on Section 31's activities and Ra's al Ghul's movements across dimensional barriers. The Vulcan had taken Batman's advice about questioning Sloane's authority, leading to her reassignment to deep cover operations where Section 31 couldn't easily monitor her growing independence. 3 weeks after the breach closures, sensors detected another quantum fluctuation, minor, brief, but unmistakably similar to the League's dimensional technology. Batman worked with Data and Geordi to trace the signature's origin, discovering it came from deep space between galaxies, in a region no Federation vessel had ever explored. Ra's is testing new locations, Batman concluded, studying the sensor data. Places where detection would be nearly impossible, where he could establish staging grounds before anyone noticed. He's learning from his failures. Then we'll need to establish monitoring networks across unexplored regions, Data said. A significant undertaking requiring resources Starfleet Command may hesitate to commit based on theoretical threat. "Which is where I come in," Batman said. "I provide the intelligence that justifies the resources. Picard presents the case to Starfleet Command, and we build defenses before Ra's builds invasion infrastructure." It was the beginning of a longer campaign, one that would require patience Batman had never possessed, cooperation with authorities he'd never trusted, and faith that idealism could protect as effectively as fear. But looking at Data's earnest dedication to protecting life, Geordi's enthusiastic approach to solving impossible problems, and Picard's unwavering commitment to doing what was right rather than what was easy, Batman began to understand why this universe had survived and prospered. They believed in something larger than themselves, and perhaps for the first time since his parents died in a Gotham alley, Batman could believe in it too. On the view screen, stars stretched into infinity, a final frontier that somehow felt less lonely than Gotham's rooftops ever had. The dimensional breaches were sealed. Ra's al Ghul's immediate invasion had been thwarted through coordinated operations that pushed Federation technology and Section 31 operatives to their absolute limits. But Batman understood what Captain Picard and Starfleet Command were only beginning to accept. This was merely the opening move in a conflict that would span universes and test whether Federation idealism could withstand threats born from centuries of calculated genocide. In his universe, Gotham continued without its Dark Knight. Crime flourished in his absence, but other heroes, Nightwing, Red Robin, Batgirl, carried on his mission. Here, In a universe governed by different rules and populated by billions who'd never known the kind of darkness that forged him, Batman faced a choice that would define his role in this new reality. He could remain the vigilante he'd always been, operating in shadows, trusting no one, using fear and intimidation to achieve objectives official authorities couldn't pursue. Section 31 would welcome him into their morally ambiguous operations, providing resources and freedom from Federation restrictions. He'd be effective, efficient, and increasingly isolated from the principles that made this universe worth protecting. Or he could attempt what he'd never managed in Gotham, genuine partnership with institutions he'd always viewed as compromised or inadequate. Work within Starfleet's limitations while maintaining his independence. Trust that people like Picard, Data, and Geordi would support him without trying to control him. Believe that idealism backed by courage could face down pragmatic evil. The choice wasn't simple. Nothing ever was for Batman. But watching the Enterprise crew work together with trust he'd rarely experienced, seeing their belief that exploration and understanding could solve problems violence only perpetuated, he recognized something he'd never allowed himself in Gotham: hope that there might be a better way. Ra's al Ghul would return. That was certainty. The remaining quantum drills in Batman's universe ensured the threat persisted, growing more sophisticated with each failed attempt. Eventually, the League would find a method even Batman couldn't counter, would open breaches Starfleet couldn't close, would force confrontation between universes neither was prepared for. But when that day came, Batman would be ready. He'd have Federation resources, Starfleet allies, and perhaps most importantly, he'd have learned to operate in the light rather than exclusively in shadow. The Dark Knight was adapting to a universe that ran on optimism, and in the process, discovering that darkness and light could coexist, each making the other stronger through contrast rather than conflict. Somewhere between galaxies, quantum fluctuations whispered of preparations being made, of an immortal eco-terrorist who'd found new universe to save through destruction. And somewhere on the Enterprise, a vigilante from another reality stood watch, ready to defend his adopted universe with everything his own world had taught him about facing impossible odds. The Federation had faced the Borg, survived the Dominion War, and maintained its principles through challenges that would have shattered lesser societies. Now it faced something new, a threat that came not from within their universe, but from dimensions beyond their understanding. And protecting them was someone who understood darkness intimately, who'd spent his life learning to fight what others couldn't, who'd become a symbol that criminals feared and innocents trusted. The stars continued their eternal dance, indifferent to the dramas played out by the small beings who explored them. But in that indifference lay opportunity, space vast enough for second chances, for redemption, for a dark night to discover that protecting people didn't always require working alone in shadow. Batman's journey in this universe had only begun, and the legends that would emerge from his presence would echo across sectors for generations. But for now, he stood on the Enterprise's bridge during Gamma Shift, watching unfamiliar constellations and understanding that home wasn't just a place, it was a purpose. And his purpose, regardless of universe, remained constant. Protect those who couldn't protect themselves, stand against darkness in all its forms, and prove that one person's determination could make impossible odds merely improbable. Live long and prosper. More stories await.